She also included videos in the ruling saying they were also protected by free speech, although the plots were kind of thin. No, anyway, it was called the act that she overturned was called the Military Honor and Decency Act, which for years had banned the selling of this kind of material because they said in that act that they thought it would encourage sexual harassment. When now some people are saying maybe the opposite is true. A quick session with the pet of the month, and maybe that soldier is...
Yeah. You get sleepy. Don't you get sleepy?
What do you mean?
You don't want to rape somebody when you're sleepy.
Why are you sleepy?
Well, after you watch the porno. Listen, I like...
Norm, you have a strange metabolism.
Maybe it's those B12 shots you got.
Right. No,
You're in high school.
I like porno as much as the next guy, you know? And I probably like it... I probably like it 100 times as much as the next guy. But although, you know, I have been watching... this is amazing, because porno is my favorite kind of movie to watch. And yet... I've seen some pornos lately that my buddies have shown me. Have you seen these ones with all male casts? Gay pornos, they're called. These things are horrible. And there's thousands of them. They make thousands of them. They have not made one good one. And I'll tell you what the problem with it is. Quite seriously.
Yes, sir.
Quite seriously, the problem with these gay pornos and every one guys having sex with each other. Who the hell wants to see that? You know?
Welcome, everyone, to Read Out. We are doing a co-stream tonight with the Compulsive Gun Buyer channel, so if you are joining us from over there, just know that I'm James, the host of Compulsive Gun Buyer, and I also am the host of this show, Read Out, where we talk about religion and politics and everything in between. And because we're currently dealing with some monetization issues over on the Read Out side, we wanted to offer it on the Compulsive Gun Buyer side as well. If you'd like to super chat, that will be the best option for that. You're welcome to watch on either stream, although the chats are quite lively on the Read Out side, so we'll see if they can get the same amount of liveliness on the CGB side. But anyways, all that out of the way, John, Christian, how are you guys doing tonight?
Doing
We'll
well.
go John
Happy
first.
to be here. Sorry. Doing well. Happy to be here. I'm in a different location on different Wi-Fi, so I hope it's coming through okay for everybody out there. Glad to be here. I don't have anything to drink at all because I think I left my water bottle upstairs, so we'll see how long I make it. Other than that, happy to be here.
All right, sounds
Also,
good.
I do have to say, sorry, I can't let this go. Okay, that intro, I didn't watch it. I just attached it and sent it, and it was as gay as I was expecting. So.
Oh yeah, well,
happy
Pride. Happy Pride. What can I say? It is one of my all-time favorite. I know I say that about every Norm clip, but that really is one of my all-time favorite, especially because it's more obscure. And just the way Norm will just, you know, with a little twinkle in his eye, be like, you know, porno is probably like my favorite genre of movie. It just cracks me up every single time. It's so out of left field, and it's even better because of Bill Maher, because he's on the Bill Maher show. Norm made a great observation about the Bill Maher show, where very often Bill Maher will have a mix. This is sort of his formula, was his formula back in the day. The show was called Politically Incorrect. And he had this mix of comedians and political figures or journalists or people like that. And he would put them all on the same panel and then talk about whatever the issues were. And it was supposed to be very politically incorrect. But Norm made this observation that the comedians would always try to make serious points and kind of show their philosophical prowess. And the journalists, because they're on the Bill Maher show, would always try to make jokes. They were always trying to be funny. And so it was a very weird mix. And Norm just went on there, classic Norm. He's just like, I'm just going to make jokes. I'm just going to, be a comedian. And he did. That's excellent clip. All right. So yes, very appropriate for Pride Month. I figured it would be a good time at this point. We're about 9 days in to check in on how Pride is going. So that's where we're going to go with some of these clips. We've got a full show for you tonight. In addition to some of these cringy Pride clips, we've got the Pentagon getting in some trouble with declassifying Mormons as Christians, sort of. Trump's DOJ is starting to do some denaturalization, which is genuinely new and interesting, and quite positive, I think, as a test trial case anyway. And then, we've got a couple more clips on some various topics, and then the meat of today's show, we're going to do a little conversation around what economics in a Christian society should look like, and just how Christians should view economics. So that's going to be important. I think interesting and hopefully illuminating. And then finally, there was a Caleb Hammer interview that came out yesterday. He runs this financial audit YouTube channel. It's kind of a mix of like Dave Ramsey meets Jerry Springer. It's quite fun, very, very entertaining. But there was this interview yesterday with a couple that were in some serious financial problems, but mostly marital problems. Like the financial thing was actually because the guy just made insane amounts of money. They probably will be able to get out of the debt if they could just turn the ship around and actually start budgeting correctly. But the marital issues were insane. But anyways, we have a few clips that I thought would be relevant to this panel. All right. In lieu of opening remarks, I'm just going to direct you to a post that I made on the Redoubt channel in the post section on a conversation we had yesterday about the meaning of ecclesia and just the Protestant meaning of the church, and how, in my view, the Protestant understanding of the church is a genuine development, meaning a new doctrine that takes into account sort of the eternal truths, but it does actually result in a change in doctrine. And so that's why, Orthodox and Catholics will often say, like, show me one person from the early church who actually believed the same thing that you believe about the church. And it's like, well, no, they didn't. It is a genuine development. I think that it's in keeping with the eternal truths that you'll find, from the apostles and the apostolic deposit, but it is a genuine change. And then just explaining kind of the history of that change and why it makes sense. So anyways, that's what the post about. Full Metal Jacket, I have not even seen your response to my response to your comment.
I'm reading it right now.
Yeah, I came in pretty hot at you, but only because I know you can take it. So I look forward to continuing that comment stream.
It is Pride Month.
Yeah, that's right. Getting hot and sweaty in the comment section. All right. Happy to have you all here. Okay. So, speaking of pride, the queen of all sins and the sin of all queens, as Andrew Clavin once remarked. Before we jump into some of the cringe clips, there was a bit from Rob Snyder, which I thought was kind of funny and apropos. So you want to play that one first, John?
I think I got this one. Shoot.
You fight for the country, you get a day. Thank you for fighting for the country. Oh, sorry, day's over. Take the meat off the barbecue. That's it.
I'm not seeing it. Oh, there it is. Okay.
Hey, thank you for fighting for the country.
Sorry, what's that?
It was a bit of a delay in popping up, but can you go back to the beginning?
My bad. Yes, I can. My apologies. Working on a laptop is considerably more frustrating.
I will say Gay Pride Month seems a little greedy. It's a month. We get Veterans Day. You fight for the country, you get a day. Thank you for fighting for the country. Oh, sorry, day's over. Take the meat off the barbecue. That's it, you get a day. That's it, day. Thank you for fighting for the country. Memorial Weekend, you die for the country to give you a weekend. Thank you for dying for the country. Take the boat out of the lake, put it on. Take the boat out of the lake, put it on the truck. You get a weekend, Memorial Weekend. Thank you for dying for the country. Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, kept the Union together, gets a day. Not even his own day. He's got to share it with George Washington, who founded the whole fucking country. He doesn't get a day either. He's got to share it with Lincoln. But if they would have sucked each other's dicks, they would have got a whole month. That's all I'm saying. I will say Gay Pride Month
Does seem slightly disproportional. There is a rather serious delay on my end for the clip, so I'm thinking maybe I should do the clip sharing. Christian, are you experiencing the same thing?
Yeah, just make sure you close out all your tabs of Daniel Craig before you share your screen.
Oh well, I could never do that. It's my background. It just selfies, really. Like, you can even tell the difference. All right, let me give me 1 second here. I wasn't prepped to share, so I'm sending myself the links. Okay. Copy. All right, let me remember how to do this. Present, share screen. Tab. Do that. Okay. All right. So yeah, this was the not a clip, but the story. Did you guys see this story?
No, sir.
So HelloFresh, which is what's that?
I saw the tagline of it.
Yeah. HelloFresh, it's a service that I've used in the past. I mean, all these meal prep services, they're usually not that great of a deal. But basically, the idea is they ship food to your door in a semi-refrigerated cardboard styrofoam box, and it kind of helps you meal prep. Basically, they take the planning side out of it, and then they just ship you exactly what you need for the week or for 4 meals or however many you subscribed for. I used one of the heavily discounted trial programs that they had at one point. Anyways, which I'm ashamed to say now because this is a genuinely disgusting ad campaign. So HelloFresh puts out, we know eating isn't always a top priority this month. We respect that. But for those of you who are ... prepping, we have an extensive lineup of high fiber recipes available. Happy Pride. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I'm not intimately familiar with perhaps some of the context, although I could get it from the context.
Is it being a top? Is that the part you're not familiar with?
Yeah. So, John, Christian, had you guys heard the term prepping before in this context?
Well, PrEP is a drug introduced in the late 1980s or 1990s, somewhere in that time frame, I believe, to assist in those suffering from certain ailments that are prevalent in certain communities, that being the AIDS community, that has a huge overlap.
I thought AIDS affected both homo and heterosexual people. I was seriously informed.
It technically affects.
No
both,
one is
it's
safe.
usually transmitted from someone who is gay, regardless.
Yeah. So is that what PrEP? Is that what the drug does? It just helps clean you out. I mean, couldn't you just take any? I thought it did more than that, but so maybe there's multiple.
PrEP is a drug, right? The high fiber is for
is for
stuff
pooping
activities.
before.
There's
Yeah,
separate.
but
PrEP is the drug that helps with AIDS, and fiber is the.
So it's almost a double entendre, you know? It's
It is, yes.
yeah.
Yes.
No,
PrEP
it's
and the
clever.
fiber
It's clever.
work together. You need to take both. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways,
how you
I just
know
thought
it's
this might
good for
help
you.
our audience in particular. So I just thought I'd throw that out
Wasn't there
there.
another tagline on that said something about bottoms up?
Yeah, that's right. Someone suggested use code bottoms up for a Pride discount, and they were like, "Oh yeah, let's do it. Why not?" Yeah, it was. Someone was just making fun of them. And they took it seriously. Alrighty. Well, that's gross. So, focusing here. Just trying to push away the gay thoughts. Gotta swim through them there. All right. Let's swap over. Let me pull up the next link here.
think it's this one. I think I can pull up links.
Oh yeah, you can
okay.
pull up this. Yeah, there you go.
So who is this? Senator Tammy Duckworth? You can pee next to me. Talking about a man peeing next to her, I guess, in the context of Pride Month, which is awkward.
Now I'm not encouraging this, but that does seem like content to publicly urinate on her, or just I mean maybe it wouldn't be good if it was public in a broader sense, but if you and her were in a room together, I think that is consent for you to just pee on her. Maybe just next to. I don't know, but can you really?
I think
Yeah.
she's very comfortable with you whipping it out and urinating next to her. I think this is exactly what she's saying.
Yeah. Anyways, and with no other context, I feel like this is a pretty open invitation. Wouldn't recommend it, but it's little creepy, a lot. So there you go. That's your Pride check-in. There's plenty more, but overall, I feel like it's a more subdued Pride month this month, which is good. I don't know if you guys
Well, I
have
don't know if you guys
experienced.
have seen it. I'm sorry, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but on X, the top reply to anyone who posts a Gay Pride Month thing, like any company, the top reply is the dog with the alarm going off on top of its head saying, you know, the F slur. And that's it. That's the top reply on every single one. So people are actually getting tired of it. There's pushback allowed on social media. Any company,
Thank
any
goodness.
team, any sports ball, anything that does it, top reply is just the F slur dog with the siren going off.
The world is healing, gents.
The
slowly but
world
surely.
is healing. Indeed. Alrighty. Well, I've got, or you can get the next one, John. So, moving on from Pride, there was a bit of a hubbub around the Department of Defense recategorizing their religions, which overall, good idea. It seems like there were lots and lots of very silly religions included in the list. I think they had like 300 something total, and they were cutting down. Anyways, basically they brought it down to I think 31 religions, but they grouped a bunch of different Christian religions or different sects into just Christian, the Christian umbrella. Yeah, so it was over 200 initially, and then they trimmed it down to 31. But there were 21 sub categories within Christian, and these included some like Jehovah's Witness, and some other notable,
Scientologists,
more
it looks like.
fringe groups, but did not include Mormonism, which frustrated the Mormons because, of course, Mormons will claim to be Christians. Now, I think we're all in agreement that Mormons are not Christians. Mormons do not adhere to a Trinitarian view of God, as well as a number of other major doctrinal differences. However, if you're just going based on Trinitarianism, this is not a very consistently applied standard. For instance, Jehovah's Witnesses are essentially Arian. So it's not entirely clear what the criteria was, if they were just going based on vibes. So eventually, as a resolution, I believe they did just remove the subcategorization and just sort of had all of these listed as separate religions altogether, which is probably the right way to go about it. But yeah, I think even Christian Scientist they had as another group. That's another not orthodox at all perspective. So I don't really have any strong feelings. I think they did the right thing in terms of just removing the subcategories. I mean, politically, I think that makes sense. I do think that Mormons are not Christians, but I think that, you know, that term also does not apply to a number of the people that they did include. And so either have a standard, clearly define it, and then use that standard, that'd be fine, or just remove the subcategorization if it's not really helping. What do you guys think about that?
Well, so I think on the actual update list that they have here, this is the new update. So it does have Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints on there, but you'll notice it is missing the Christian delineation. So
Right.
they'll show you the denominations, so to speak, and then right underneath it they have Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So I mean, I think this is really simple. Mormons do not worship the same God in any way, shape, or form as quote unquote like what's a better word for everybody? Like a Nicene Christian or Trinitarian Christian? Maybe that's a better way to say it, right? More of the like standard Christology. Their Christ is a created being. They don't believe in creation ex nihilo. They don't believe in the Trinity in the same way we do. They believe that the Holy Spirit, Jesus Christ, and God the Father have different substances. You can become gods. Like it's completely different. It's not the
Right.
same thing in any way, shape, or form. It might bear some of the same names. They might use some of the same literature, but it's completely different in its construction. Therefore, they're not worshiping the same God.
Yeah, it doesn't help they have additional texts. I mean, I think at least with Jehovah's Witness, you get an overlap in terms of what they consider the holy text. Now, it is odd when you talk to a Jehovah's Witness because the texts that they recognize are only the Protestant canon, and they're so divorced from the traditional church that they can't even really explain why that makes sense. It's completely nonsensical. But yeah, there really is no clear standard here. Now, I will say they did. I'll throw on mine. Let's see. They're working. There we go. Oh, whoops. 1 second. Now it keeps on opening up a new tab. There's a new list. That's what I'm trying to share. But let's here, let me just represent. So the second list that they, after the backlash, this is the final list. And so they basically just removed the Christian prefix from it all and just sort of broke it out into a bunch of different groups, including some that most people would all categorize as being Christian, but Lutheran, Methodist, Orthodox Christian are just considered separate designations altogether. Y'all think that's better or don't really care?
Well, I mean, again, Christian is such a broad term that it gets used colloquially for a lot of things. And I think a lot of the online apologetic sphere over the last year or so, at least from what I've seen, has been kind of to draw distinctions between the denominations, right? So they're especially from like Orthodox guys as they've gotten bigger, is to draw distinctions between the different denominations, who is and who is not a Christian, who has the authority to say that, and what people are just straight up heretics, and even outside of like the larger umbrella term of quote unquote Christian, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think fair enough. I think that there's not. It's kind of a nothing burger, really, but I do think that the only reason why this made the news is because Mormons got very testy, and Mormons get rather testy. Is something I've
There's
noticed.
a lot of Mormon. There's a lot of Mormon politicians too.
There is, yeah.
That's certainly true.
Well, the Mormons don't really have the best history with the government either. They've had a revolt or two, if I remember correctly. So.
Yes, they have been known to be politically active and potentially diffident.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyways, there's not much more to say here. All right. The next one is another article that I thought was just worth bringing up because apparently the DOJ, if you can pull this one up, John, the DOJ has started the process of denaturalizing some people, which is pretty unprecedented. Like, there has always been a process, but traditionally this is not something that's been done. It's always been something where basically you'd have people that, citizens that were just trashy humans, and we just kind of throw up our hands and say, yeah, we can't really do anything about it. Once they're naturalized, once they become citizens, we can't really change anything. And this is obviously a much smaller number than is
Gunshots
ultimately
sent people
required.
running for cover.
But you got to start somewhere, and this seems like a good, promising signs. And I will say, you would not have seen this or anything like this in the Biden or Kamala Harris administration. So I think this is it's a good place to start. Good precedent.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it hasn't been used more. Right.
I know.
It seems
Yeah.
like it should be a useful tool within the government's arsenal, so to speak, to punish people who don't belong here, right? And
Yeah.
I mean, I think that this is a good precedent for us. Now, I think the pushback against that is that, well, if the government can just denaturalize people at will, that could lead to some very problematic scenarios in a couple of years, perhaps, where let's say somebody is a refugee, let's say, from South Africa, and he gets a little testy about certain things, and they're like, well, guess what, buddy? Denaturalized, heading back, go get your head cut off.
You're talking
back
about
in
our
South
favorite,
Africa.
richest African American?
What's the context behind these people being denaturalized? Like, what did they do? Is there any information? I'm curious.
I
So
think
I
it
can
has
read
to
a
do
bit of
with
the
fraud,
article.
but I don't know if it's fraud. Yeah, go ahead and pull that up. I hopefully it's this is a case
Ooh,
that I've
yeah.
been thinking. When it comes to fraud about their immigration status, right? Like one of the things you have to do is swear allegiance to the United States. If it becomes clear after the fact that you were fraudulently making that statement of allegiance, that should be clear grounds for denaturalization. I don't know if it's more general fraud here, but I know there is a fraud component. So what does it say?
Yeah, so officials say, excuse me, officials say that some of the people targeted in the latest effort are accused of committing fraud and the sexual abuse of a minor. So this is, getting rid of the citizenship for a naturalized U.S. citizen is rare and can only occur in federal court. Under the Biden under the Biden administration, the Justice Department filed 24 denaturalization cases, according to a DOJ official. The Trump administration has already outpaced that within the last year. So again, while this is something, it's bigger than zero. Like it seems like it's almost like a meaningless amount of people, right?
Right.
If we're only doing it to like 17 people at a time for cases of fraud or serious crimes, like I feel like if we were going to apply this standard holistically across the board, you could get a lot more people on this sort of thing.
Yeah, I agree.
And also, why are we denaturalizing these child predators instead of dematerializing them? Seems like that's
So I'd
way
also
too
like to
nice.
see how many H-1B visas we brought in the same day to kind of
Yeah.
equal this one out. Yeah, that'd be interesting
Yeah,
to see.
Well, that's
There
a
are
good
many
point, 'cause isn't it like 75,000 per year, 50,000 per year minimum? And then
Yeah.
the states have their own limits, so it's like daily has got to be in the hundreds, if not, more than that,
Yeah.
if not like close to 1,000 per day. So it's like it's something that they should utilize more, but yeah.
Although I do
But
think
on
that
its own,
again,
it's
this
not
is
that great.
this is a different. I don't know what the Biden administration's pretext for the denaturalizations was, but if this is a more novel application, then potentially you could see this expanded to a larger group. So that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that this is a herald of good times to come and many more likewise. Yeah, so good stuff there. All right, the next one is a clip, so I'll go ahead and try to pull this up. And this one is from, what is it called? Roots of Orthodoxy or something. They are not a particularly well-regarded channel, and I do not know anything about this person, but he makes a particular point that let me stop it. That I have heard many people make, trad Catholics as well as Orthodox, and I think that, so putting aside the origin of this clip, I think that it is good fodder for discussion. So let's just go ahead and watch it. It's specifically on the topic of the American culture around individualism.
To begin thinking with the mind of the
Can
church.
you,
I believe the more
can you hear
they
it? I can't hear it.
are deepened
We can hear it.
in
Oh, you can? Okay.
Orthodox
All right,
spirituality, the more they can keep all the positive things of the American culture and Protestantism culture. For example, the American society is individualistic. People live as individual, not as persons in a relationship. While Christianity is a relationship. You cannot live alone. God is three persons. Live in relationship, in mutual love. So when we are a real Orthodox, we can have balance between the independency we need as persons and differentiate this independency from individuality. This is just one example. So I believe that we need more time, more years to be rooted in the real Orthodox spirituality. I don't like this word, but I have to use it because it is so common in the American language. So when we have, as I said in another interview, when we have spiritual fathers and mothers, real spiritual, Orthodox spiritual fathers and mothers rooted in Orthodoxy, we can say we started to have the flavor of American Orthodoxy.
For a new convert in the United
All right. Any thoughts on that? I'll go to you, Christian, first.
Me, huh? No, I kind of want to hear what you say, to be honest with you.
Okay.
So kind of, yeah.
Howard.
Curious.
All right, John, do you want to have any thoughts before I give my take?
I mean,
I'll give my take first.
Orthodoxy. Oh,
Okay,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
You keep it going.
Okay, all right. So, I mean, basically, I think that the point is fine, and I think that there is there's no question that America has an individualistic spirit, and I do think that is is problematic. Although it's a horrible word, a very left-coded word. But basically, I think individualism as an ideology is a perversion of a better concept. However, I think the problem is very often when people reject individualism, they jump to the other side and think collectivism is the opposite of individualism, therefore that's the way to go. And I don't think that that's what individualism is a perversion of, right? It's not like the good is collectivism and the perversion is individualism, and so that's where, no. Individualism is a perversion, a taking to excess of the concept of subsidiarity, which is actually a very Christian concept, one that the Catholic Church has certainly recognized, and I believe the Orthodox Church would as well, though I'm not as well versed on their kind of political sentiments. But subsidiarity, the idea that essentially where it can be handled locally, it should be handled locally, and this makes the family the ultimate political unit, or the household is the ultimate political unit, and then moving from there, you have sort of a community that tries to handle its issues where it can, and those issues that it can handle, it does handle locally, rather than having the state handle those issues that can be handled locally, but those issues that deal with sort of intrastate commerce, which should be handled by the state, and then those issues that deal with interstate commerce should be handled by the nation. So there's this just using commerce as an example, but there's this sense of concentric circles of influence, and I think that is what individualism is a perversion of. There is this good tendency to localize and to bring down in terms of the sphere of control in terms of government, and this is kind of what federalism is ultimately about. And this is the really the idea of present in the founding of the nation, right? Think of the Federalist Papers. This is the spirit. Individualism is the hybridization of that spirit and taking it to an extreme that is unhelpful. However, you can't completely ignore individualism in the sense that some households are going to be made up of one person. And so you are going to have some individuals that also, will play into your society and how they you need to factor in how they should operate within the society. So that's kind of my thoughts. I just want to basically say that I have heard people rail against individualism, and kind of going back to the Tucker clip that we played a few weeks ago, where Tucker was talking to someone who basically claimed that if you read the Bible, it's not perfectly Marxist, but it's much more communist than it is, American capitalist. And it's like, that's just not true. We'll get into capitalism in a little bit here when we talk about economics, but certainly the Bible is clearly not Marxist. Capitalism ultimately is just a recognition of private property, which the Bible does recognize, and Marxism is a completely collectivist mindset, and that is not the biblical mindset. It is one of much closer to subsidiarity, which is going to be more on the individualistic side. And so individualism is an exaggeration, but it is still, I think, on the same side of the spectrum. And so running to collectivism is not the way. Those are my thoughts. John, you go ahead.
Well, right. So individualism is like a double-edged sword, right? So it can lead to great things. It can lead to, individual excellence. It can lead to us wanting like what's best for ourselves and whatnot. So in some ways, it can take advantage of people's natural selfish desires to do well and push them to their best. But the flip side of that is it does not instill any duties on anything greater than yourself, right? So you are the ultimate goal in your life, right? Nothing more than that. So like I was listening to Stefan Molyneux on Sam Hyde the other day, and he made some really wacky claim about how like if you look at a forest is made up of trees. The forest doesn't actually exist. It's just a concept, it's not a real thing. It's just the individual trees, nothing more. Same thing, like there's no people, just individuals. And I'm like, surely you understand that there has to be a symbiotic relationship between these people. They're not independent. There's a
Furthermore,
coexistence, a co-functioning.
You can take that all the way down, right? You could say that there's no person. There's just a collection of cells, right? Like a tree is just a collection of tree cells. Like you can do this all the way down to the atom and even lower than that.
Right, get down to the atomic, whatever
Yeah,
it might be.
just people don't exist.
Or quantum dots floating around, okay? But
Yeah.
So individualism and its successes kind of leads to where we are now. That is the Western ethos. That is the post-Enlightenment era. Whereas I do believe, like you say, I think that the family unit should be the smallest member of society. The focus should not be so much on the individual, but on the family. And that's like the Christ-centered life, right? God is in himself, Father, Son, and Spirit, right? It's not there's a one and many within God as like that's like the prototype for what we have here on earth. Like we are like a type of that. We are a picture of that, an image of that, if you will. So I think you have to have something greater than yourself. And even from like a non-Christian paradigm, it allows your society to have duties to one another. You have a greater calling than just yourself, right? Because when you are just rabid individuals, you can do things like sell out your neighbor for a couple extra dollars because you have no duties to him. Right. You have no responsibilities to your neighbor, to your community, to your family, nothing. It's literally just you. Me
Right.
as a father, if I'm a rabid individual, well, I could save a lot of money if I just stopped feeding my kids or just, or I'd buy a really nice car for myself and then, have my family live in it up, something like that, right? But individualism can be good, but like you say, the excesses of it lead us to where we are now, where we're all atomized individuals and we're weaker and we're more evil and we don't take care of one another.
The focus on relationship is really important. That's a part of this man's statement that I really agree with. Although I think that does require a recognition of the individual and of the importance of the individual, because only individuals can have relationships. Like you have to have people, individual people, persons to have relationships. And, that's part of the idea of the Trinity is you can't just say the Trinity, you have to recognize the three in the one. And so recognizing the validity and the significance of the three, of the individuals therein is a key part of that formula. And so that requires the legitimization of individuals in order to pursue relationship. And so you can't discount the individuals therein. I mean, C.S. Lewis makes a great point about, in the Screwtape Letters, he talks about how when it comes to love, one of the devil's great tricks is to emphasize sort of this collectivist mindset of like workers of the world unite. He doesn't use the exact words, but this is kind of the idea where basically you think about how your love for the orphans starving in Africa, and those are the people that you love. And then the people near you, the devil will cultivate all kinds of hatred because they're the people that you actually interact with and have notice all their tics and their oddities and their sin. And so if the devil can cultivate in you love because you can't completely do away with love. It's very painful personally to live a life with absolutely no, assent to the concept of love. So you got to, the devil has to kind of use. You can only pervert things. So he uses that good concept in your heart, but directs it to something that's basically meaningless, and then to people that are actually around you, where it has meaning and real value and experience. Then he can cultivate hatred, and you can still feel like you're a loving person because you love all these people that you've never met, that you never actually have any association with. And I think that that's a very astute observation of how we can be twisted away from relationships into sort of a this vague concept that collectivism ultimately lends itself to. Christian, what are your thoughts?
Play the video again for me, please, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
United States, what does it actually take to begin thinking with the mind of the church?
I believe the more they are deepened in Orthodox spirituality, the more they can keep all the positive things of the American culture and Protestantism culture. For example, the American society is individualistic. People live as individual, not as persons in a relationship. While Christianity is a relationship, you cannot live alone. God is three persons, live in relationship, in mutual love. So when we are a real Orthodox, we can have balance between the independency we need as persons and differentiate this independency from individuality. This is just one example. So
I'll go ahead and pause it there. I think that's kind of the gist of it.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm kind of composing my thoughts about it, but I think a lot of the base principles of orthodoxy, or at least orthodoxy in general, are kind of foreign to America. Orthodoxy hasn't really been introduced to America until like recent times. It kind of, came in with immigrants. Little churches started to be built here and there, but as of recently, it's been exploding, like huge amounts. Like even my parish had a meeting this Sunday about getting gifted 3 acres of land to build a whole new church out here in Salt Lake City, and they're saying that this is going to be a big hub for Orthodoxy. That's what my parish is predicting. But I do think a lot of the ideas of Orthodoxy do contradict a lot of the ideas of the American culture. So I don't know, maybe in like a couple generations or something, there's going to be a big mindset shift within Americans as far as how Orthodoxy affects them.
Right. Now, he uses the term interdependency as opposed to individualism, it seems like.
Yeah.
Has your impression been, having kind of started to attend some Orthodox ceremonies, do they tend more towards collectivism? Do you feel like the individualism is melting away, or is it still being, is the individual importance still being recognized, but in the context of something that's, I guess, more akin to like subsidiarity, or like, I'm just not sure exactly what he means by interdependency, or what that tends towards, because obviously it seems like Orthodoxy has at times been rather complicit with this more collectivist mindset, certainly in Russia. So I'm just kind of curious what the vibe has been, if you've experienced anything along those lines.
I don't know. I guess I haven't really looked at like attending divine liturgies and been specifically looking for that aspect, I suppose.
Sure.
So a lot of this like kind of goes over my head in a sense.
Okay.
But
Well,
this
think
is
about
something I can...
Oh, sorry. Go
Go
ahead.
ahead, John.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
Well,
you're
I was
good.
gonna say, think about the difference in even like what we talked about last week, right? In the difference in how we view the church, right?
Mhm.
Orthodox believe that they are the theanthropic body of the church. They are the body of Christ here on earth, right? Whereas Protestants, we're like the invisible body, so we're like connected, but we're our own individuals, and they can believe different things than us, and they can do this and they can do that. Whereas in Orthodoxy, it is more of a unified whole, right? So it is much more collective in that sense. It is a communal experience, right?
Yeah.
You're not separated from the church. You're not separated from the body of believers. You are one holistic body, right? So even in
Okay.
like the foundation of what church means to them, it is completely different to like our Western concept, right?
Yeah. So, okay, bringing that point up then, something I have noticed is that usually events like post Divine Liturgy events like potlucks or men's groups usually occur at people's houses typically. So it seems like the attendance at church spreads out further past than just the building. Like it goes into people's homes, people host events. It's very personable, almost like a big family, kind of like what FMJ was alluding to.
Well, and from what I've been told, it's much more about the experience,
Yes.
right? It's not some nominal assent to a list of ideas, right? It's like, okay, I assent to the 12 nominal ideas of Orthodox Christianity, therefore I'm an Orthodox Christian. It's like, no, it's at the parish level. It is
Yeah.
living within your local body. It is experiencing divine liturgy. It is all of the things that go along with that. It's not just like a lot of Protestants when I was growing up. It was like go to church on Sunday, leave afterwards, never think about it again.
Yeah.
You know, and that was like I would say probably like 90, not all Protestants, of course. Lots of people do all sorts of extracurricular activities and study groups and things like that. But the majority of them that I saw witness growing up in more Baptist fundamentalist circles was like church on Sunday, and I forget about it for a whole week until I come back next Sunday.
That hasn't been my experience in Protestantism, but certainly there's
Well, you come from more of
Just a little
a
bit
little
taste.
bit more of a high church background, right?
no.
With Presbyterians.
No. PCA is pretty low church, all things considered. Because PCA had to leave all the nice churches, so all the nice buildings are in the U.S. PCA or PC USA.
I think it's going
Um,
to be interesting in the next couple generations to see how kind of the mindset shifts with all these new Orthodox converts, because there is an exponential growth. It's exploding. So I think we're going to see a lot of change within the next couple generations, but we'll see.
Yeah,
hmm
I'm curious as well.
Yeah.
One thing I will say, I think that I just don't want to get lost in all this conversation. I believe Orthodox, Catholic, Protestant, one thing that we all agree on when pressed, there's some necessary, I guess, rhetorical throat clearings here. There's some caveats to this statement, but in the end, we all believe that salvation is doled out at an individual level. And I think that is important to mention. Whereas, regardless of how kind of covenantal you are, regardless of how highly you hold kind of the church aspect of how key the visible church is in your salvation, whether or not salvation can be had outside of the visible church, that kind of thing. Christians throughout history have acknowledged that in the end, you do have a mixed congregation, right? You have both believers and unbelievers, right? You have elect and unelect, if you want to use those terms, which are biblical terms. So, they might mean something different to an Orthodox versus to a Calvinist. But basically, there's going to be the wheat and the tares mixed together. And so just because you go to church, just because you go to the right church, doesn't mean that you are going to heaven if you do not actually have a personal relationship. Now, the personal relationship phrase is something that seems to be more uniquely Protestant. That certainly is an emphasis that Protestants have brought to the forefront. Catholics tend to admit that it's actually a positive emphasis, that the Catholics did not emphasize that nearly enough. I don't know if Orthodox have come to a similar admission, or if they feel like they've always kind of had it right. But that is that is the consensus, that you do actually have to have an individual faith. That is what saves. Your participation in the correct community is not ultimately salvific. Again, there is an element of the individual that cannot be discounted in Christianity, and I think that can get lost if you rail too hard against individualism, which again is an excess, but there are some. The individual is still a key component of Orthodox Christian thought.
Yeah, I think so. In generalities, I would be interested if there are some exceptions to that, though. Right? So, like if
Oh, I mean,
the sorry, go ahead.
there are definitely extra normative means of salvation. I mean, I think
Sure.
definitely is
Well,
perhaps
yeah,
too strong of a
100%.
term, but like I think that children who die in infancy are most likely saved. I mean, the Westminster Confession says elect infants dying in infancy are saved, which is the implication being
Some
that if they
infants are born to be damned. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
right. It leaves that door open. Now that's not necessarily the right interpretation, but it certainly I think they are admittedly vague. But Augustine basically felt like no unbaptized infants were saved, but he did feel like even baptized infants were saved. And now, of course, that wouldn't be because of their personal relationship with Christ, because they couldn't have a personal relationship if they were infants. So there are extra normative means of salvation in every single denomination and sect that would have to at least include your baptized infants who cannot have that kind of personal relationship. So I don't want to make it seem like those cases don't exist, and I think that you can expand that sort of extra normative circle even broader, probably.
Yeah. Well, and I think this is where individual responsibility comes in, right? You can't have individual responsibility without, or individual like consequences for your actions without individual responsibility, right? So there is some level of individualism at play. For sure, there has to be, right? You can't do away with that.
Yeah. Certainly, once you, at the very least, once you reach a certain age, although age of accountability is kind of a loaded term, but yeah. All right. Well, we can move on from this clip. Let's see. What is next in the agenda? Well, I think that actually leads pretty nicely into the economics conversation. So, in terms of kind of how Christians should think about economics, I've just been thinking about this a little bit, and I think I've seen a lot of discussion that bothers me a little bit, because I think people are it's become very common, especially on the farther right, to completely discount the ideas of libertarians. And fair enough, libertarians have a lot of bad ideas. The overall naivete of libertarians is frustrating and worth pointing out. But that can often bleed into sort of a discounting of capitalism in general, which I think is perhaps misguided or comes from a misguided understanding of what capitalism is. And once you reject capitalism, then you are on a fast track to accepting other seriously subpar forms of economics that have all kinds of issues. So in terms of capitalism, I think most broadly, capitalism is a recognition of private property, and that is pretty clearly attested to in Scripture. I mean, the example that we discussed previously, which I think is a good one, is when Ananias and Sapphira they sell their land, and they bring a gift and try to deceive the Holy Spirit, and they say that this is all of the earnings that all the profits we received, or all of the, not even just profits, all the revenue received from the sale of this land, and we're giving this to the church. But of course, they had actually kept some, and so they were trying to brag about having given all of it, but they weren't actually giving all. And one of the things Peter says is, you could have kept it all. You did not have to give any of it. And yet you chose to lie, and that was what they were being, what they ended up dying for, was because they tried to lie to Peter and to the Holy Spirit and to God. But I repeat myself. So there are other examples where private property is validated And I think ultimately that is what capitalism is about. And we'll get into a little bit sort of the details of what a transaction is, because I think this is another thing that people just often don't understand when it comes to discussing economics, why a transaction is a good thing. When two people exchange values freely, it has to be freely, why that actually creates value for both parties. But all in all, just first impressions. John, you actually have an economics degree, I believe. John, what are your thoughts on broadly on economics as someone who studied this in some detail?
So, as somebody who has a degree in economics, that doesn't mean anything. As like what I actually studied was like international banking. Like you want me to calculate the M1 money supply and really lame, stupid stuff like that. I mean, it's like a really high level overview of capitalism is just that. It's mostly like a laissez-faire system where there's private profit incentives, right? And that is what it is, right? So it's private, individual versus collective or central planning, right? So that's really what you have as a delineation between most other systems or competitive systems to capitalism. I hate getting into the definitions of terms because people play the stupid games. Well, actually, this isn't real capitalism. Real capitalism's never been tried. Or on the flip side of that, you get, well, we've never actually reached true communism. Therefore, you can't say anything bad about any of the systems that came before, right?
Those people are
Mhm.
largely silly and naive.
Yeah.
I mean, that is, it's just naivety.
So I checked out on a lot of that discussion because I think economics is downstream of culture, and culture is or should be influenced by Christianity. So like what somebody's individual views of their economic policies are, I feel like is a societal issue. Like it's a moral issue rather than like which system is the best, right? So for instance, if I lived in a country of, you know, majority Christians, vast majority moral believing Christians, and they had a more centrally planned economy, like I would prefer that to then being surrounded by evil people who believed in like free market capitalism, and that was their only driving force was maximum profits, right? Because again, the deeper you get into the economics discussion, it ends up being so material,
Right.
and like that's all they're concerned with is like number go up, therefore better, which
Right.
I think is antithetical to Christianity.
Well, and here's the thing. I mean, so the reason why pure capitalism has never been tried is the reason why pure communism has never been tried, because both would require men to be angels. Both would require men to be, to use the Madisonian phrase from the Federalist Papers. Both would require perfect people, because pure capitalism would require an open market, which is different from a free market. And this is something that I think people just do not recognize, especially libertarians, is that you cannot have a free market without walls to protect the market from thieves to come in and pillage the market. There's a difference between free transactions and free marketism. Basically, you have to have, if you're going to have a market, it has to be one where people are actually free to conduct transactions. And if you don't account for that, then you have a naive position where you only are dealing, you just assume that everyone is good and no one is going to try to pillage the other person. Because here's the thing, if you're just acting in your self-interest, if you're just taking sort of the early 2000s, late 90s concept of greed is good, then, the very Ayn Rand concept, then ultimately it is better for you as an individual to just kill the person that you're engaging in a transaction with and take all their stuff. That is better for you. It is not more efficient for the system, but who cares? If you're just being greedy, it's better for you to be greedy, right? The guy who just sort of makes everyone else slaves around them and lives a lavish life is going to be better off personally than he would if he engaged in free transactions. But at a system level, of course, it is more efficient to have a free market, and so economists will get really snobby, especially libertarian economists, and they'll say like, you just don't understand economics if you are trying to talk about any kind of government intervention and because it's less efficient. Or they'll talk about how like war is less efficient. And it's like, yes, war is inefficient at a system level. But guess what? China doesn't view the US and China as, they don't care about the system of US and China. They care about China. And for China, it's better to do what's in China's interest. And to some degree, we should think the same way, right? If you were dealing with an adversarial party, you can't view you and them as the system. You have to view yourself as the system. And so so that's where economics is all about efficiency. And but efficiency, it matters which where you draw the lines of the system. And so in order to have an efficient free market, you have to have walls around that market, and that requires government, some kind of collective action. And so this is sort of the unspoken truth of economics, and this is why it always gets so complicated. And this is why there is no pure economic system, of course, because it can't exist in a fallen society.
Yeah, I agree. This is something that I brought up to teachers in college, was like the free market can't possibly exist, because the way that people view the free market, the way that they define it usually, is a market without government influence. They're like, finally, if we could just get these people, if you're a supply side economist, if we could just get these people out of the market, it would fix all of our problems magically, right? And then we could have a free market. Well, the problem is, good sir, that you and I are in the market and we are acting upon it. And guess what? If I have more power in the market than you do, I am going to exert my will upon it. And guess what? Now I control it rather than some. It's like, who cares what we call the power? Because it's all about power and force, right? If the power is the government bad, but if it's Amazon good, it's like, if Amazon, undercuts every local business and forces them all out of the market, is that better than if the government regulates small businesses out? It's like
John, you cut out. I can't hear you anymore. Is it? Oh, you're
check
back.
one, check two.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So there's this boogeyman of the government. Like anytime the government does something that's good, and then they're like, but when Amazon does it based, or when XYZ trillion zillion dollar company that has infinite amount of resources to exert forces on the market without any sort of like manipulation in play, right? They like Walmart. Walmart can just go into a location, they can underbid everybody in that location, and they all go away, right? That's just how it happens. And ironically, the only way, as you said, to protect the free market is when some city board gets together and they're like, actually, no Walmart in this town. Sorry, bros. Right. We're actually going to protect our local businesses, which again, people would freak out and be like, but that's the free market not being allowed to operate because you have a government coming in and putting its foot down. It's the same thing why why libertarianism has to get rid of all borders and countries at some point, because it's like Canada famously used to dump lumber into the U.S. market. They would dump lumber into the U.S. market, drive the price down, put our companies out of business, and then raise their prices. And it's like, well, that if we allow them to do that, they just win. In a zero-sum game, they just win. Now we're dependent on Canadian lumber because they're undercutting us. We go out of business, and then they raise their prices anyway. So guess what? We're putting tariffs on all Canadian lumber, right? And it did the same thing with steel and a bunch of other stuff, right? We can't allow you to just dump our markets. China's famous for this. We actually have to protect our markets so that they can continue to operate. So
now, here's the thing.
No such thing as a free market. It does not exist.
And the economists will come back and say, well, don't you know that the tariffs are really just being passed on to the American people? Like that we're the ones who pay the burden of the tariffs. And it's like, there is some truth to this. However, if the dumping works, then we're also the ones who pay the burden of that. And so basically, it all depends on whether or not you're dealing with an adversary or not. And this is why the Trump tariffs were somewhat misguided in the sense that it was just like tariff everybody. And it matters who you tariff. If you have a friendly country, then it is actually better to have no tariffs between you. Like that is the goal, because that is more efficient. And if you are friendly, then it is going to be better for both of you long term. Now, in the long run, we'll all be dead. So it depends on what kind of long run you're talking about. But long term, if you are friendly with someone, then it probably is worth considering you and them added together as the system. And it's going to be advantageous for both of you if you grow together. In the same way that when you engage with another business, right? Like I run a business, John, you run a business. When you're working with your suppliers, you you have to take into account the relationship when you're doing quotes or when you are making bids, because sometimes you recognize, like, I could lowball them, or I could get a deal from them, kind of pressure them into something that isn't going to be good for them and is going to be good for me. And that might work once or twice, but if you want to have a continued relationship, which is ultimately going to save you time and trying to not having to find a new supplier, and ultimately you want whatever deal you work out to be good for both of you, because that's going to be much more efficient and much just better for both of you in the long run. And as a country, we have to make those same kind of determinations. So if you have a friendly relationship, then that is going to be ultimately in both of your better interest. However, if you have an adversarial relationship, the calculus completely changes, because you cannot consider you plus your adversary as the system. Working with that system as the basis of your efficiency calculations is just going to be completely senseless. Well, so with Canada, like, yes, we should just go ahead and take over Canada. They're basically an adversary. They're an evil country. I'm totally in support of just annexing all of Canada, in addition to Greenland, and then we'll go and take Mexico afterwards. But it would be better if we could work out some kind of a friendly relationship, probably. But there is definitely a place for tariffs. There is definitely a place for protectionism. Now, it's very it becomes very complex, especially when you deal with these countries that are like, semi-adversarial, but not entirely. Real situations are actually complex, and that's one of the complexities of life, are the sorts of things that economics is not particularly well geared for. It deals with kind of a pure rationalistic cases, and doesn't always know how to deal in the real world, and that's the biggest criticism. But we can't just toss out the baby with the bathwater. So we'll get into that in a little bit more. But yeah, go ahead, John.
Well, the presuppositions are just off, right? So almost all economic theory and discussion starts with the idea that people are rational actors. It's just not the case. It's like the libertarian blank slate ideology. It's like it just doesn't work. We're not all interchangeable widgets. The China man, the Nigerian man, and the Norwegian man do not operate in the same way. It's like it just does not happen. Not everything is a zero-sum game, but almost everything has an element of zero-sum game. Not everything is a win-win scenario, okay, especially in terms of like world resources and world politics. And to kind of, if I may, go on a little bit of a diatribe when it comes to tariffs and stuff like that, there's this concept of elasticity, which is basically who can outrun the cost first. So take, for instance, in this hypothetical scenario, if a car manufacturer is selling a car for $35,000, if the price goes to $35,001, it just immediately craters, zero sales. Customers will not budge on price. If it goes above a certain limit, sales immediately crash to zero, right? 10%, 20% tariffs come in, it cuts into the car manufacturer's profits. Like, who wins in that? Well, it's not the car manufacturer, because again, if they raise prices at all, it goes to zero. So it's basically, there's certain products where the companies have more power or the people have more power. Take, for instance, a more recent example, like Holosun. During the period of time where there was 100% tariffs on Chinese goods, Holosun's products did not raise in price at all. You'd think they would, right? The people anti-tariffs would tell you, well, the prices are just going to raise 100%. Did not. Didn't move at all.
Right, because the Holosun buyers aren't really going to accept much higher prices. So if they sell it
at what, pay aim point prices.
Right.
Like, nobody in their right mind would pay $900 for a Holosun optic. Not a single person. Right? So in that sense, the American buyer has way more power than Holosun does. So you know what Holosun did for like 2 months? Nothing. They ate the entirety of the cost, right? And so that's it's complicated. Okay, it has to be taken on a case by case basis. Am I here? You guys froze for me.
Yeah, you froze too, but we got you.
Okay.
Yeah, no, case by case basis. You're absolutely correct. And yeah, elasticity is one of those terms that is worth understanding. It's one of those concepts from economics that is actually important to understand to have a intelligent conversation about economics. So elasticity, I recommend that, if you have never taken an economics class, a little bit of research into elasticity would be, and inelasticity is good. Another thing another valuable contribution that economics has given us since the time of Adam Smith is hopefully John comes back at some point, is the science of a transaction and how a transaction, a free transaction, a transaction freely conducted, is actually going to add value to both parties. Again, if you're considering this the system as being both parties, party A and party B. So let me just walk through in detail. Hopefully this doesn't get too convoluted. But basically, imagine you have person A and person B, and there's some object that they're doing a transaction for. So for instance, let's just call it a bike. Welcome back, John. Can you hear us?
So my apologies. I think I reset my my Starlink. I think I might have been on my parents' Wi-Fi, which is like
Oh.
dial-up from the 1980s. So I should now be on Starlink. Does it look better?
It looks
Yeah, it
10
looks
times
much better.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was on
All
the
right.
wrong one the entire time. My bad.
Well,
I was like, what's
welcome
going on? I
back.
should have good internet.
Yeah.
Never mind.
All right.
My apologies.
So I took the opportunity while you were gone to jump into sort of a detailed explanation of a transaction. Just again, trying to talk about some of the benefits of this science. It's more of a social science, but there are some technical components to economics that actually do add value to our conversation and our understanding of how society works. And so just thinking through the details of a transaction and why a transaction freely conducted does actually add value to both parties. Let's say you have person A and person B transacting over a bike. And so person A is selling the bike, and he has some idea of the value of that bike to him. Now we can, in a sense, that value is one of those things that actually shifts. There's really no inherent value. Value is a stand-in for another concept, but money is a great way to determine the relative value of something, and so let's say the person is offering the bike at $10, but he is willing to accept $8. At $8, he will make the transaction and feel like it was just an even swap. And at $7.99, he feels like, nope, no deal. I'm gonna walk away and find someone else. So we'll kind of narrow it down to within 1 cent of what that value is to him, to person A. So he values it at $8, but he's selling it for $10. So the value that he gets if this transaction is conducted at the $10 price is going to be $2 added to him because he values the bike at $8. That is the lowest amount that he's willing to accept. That's where he sees the dollar amount being equal to the asset in hand. All right, buyer comes along, and he is willing to pay a certain amount. That's going to be what he values the bike at. And so his number, let's say it's $12. He's willing to pay $12 for the bike, but he sees the price at $10. And so now he too has gained a $2 value bump because he values the asset that he's going to get at $12, but he gets it for $10. And so now he, the total value of the assets in his hands, because cash is an asset, the bike is an asset, he trades the cash for $10 of the cash for the bike. Now he has, in theory, the $2 that he would have been willing to spend and the bike. So now he has $12. Well, really, he valued the bike at $12, and he has the extra $2 that he was willing to spend. So now he has $14 worth of assets, where and the seller in the same way now has the cash that he values at obviously $10, and he has he has the cash that he values at $10, which is $2 above what he valued the bike at. So now he's gained $2 from the transaction, and the buyer has gained $2 from the transaction. So both parties have actually increased the value. So the system has increased by $4 in terms of value, which again, value is this relative term that we can only actually assign a number to in relativistic terms. It's really hard to intrinsically calculate value. If you need some illustrations, you can look this up. But basically, that's how a transaction works. And just take my word for it if you don't understand it. A transaction, if freely conducted, adds value to both parties. And there are ways to calculate in dollar amounts or in whatever denomination you choose how much value is being added to the system. Now, here's the catch. If person A or person B wanted the bike and instead just killed person B or just stole the bike. Now, he takes the $12 that he was willing to spend and adds the bike to his collection, which he valued at $12. So now he's got $24, and person A has zero. Well, he's lost everything that he had, assuming the bike was his only assets. So he's got zero, and person B has $24 worth of value. You'll notice that I'd have to calculate the going in position, but at a system-wide level, I don't have the exact numbers, but at a system-wide level, there is less value. But if person B is considering just himself as the system, then he has much more value than he would otherwise have had. So it is better for him, but not better for the system if you include both A and B. So again, that's the science of a transaction and why free transactions are good for the system, depending on what you consider to be the system. This is ultimately a very profitable concept if you can get a society to agree on the rules of transactions and to actually engage in transactions freely. And if you have no killing or stealing, then it actually works out very well. But in order to avoid killing and stealing, you have to have some kind of enforcement mechanism, some kind of, dare I say, government intervention to force evil people with original sin, to actually not just kill and steal from each other. And so that's where you actually have to have something to protect the freedom of the market in order to allow for transactions to be freely conducted. So that is why transactions are good, and ultimately for the system. And the trick of a government is to make that system operate at the correct level, to view the system as being your community or potentially your state or your country. There are overlapping spheres of interest there, but not to include things that are adversarial to the system. So again, it's good to understand this, and people can often be anti-capitalistic without ever understanding these basic concepts of economics, which just makes them sound like fools, because this is incontrovertible. I mean, what I've just said is, at a pure capitalist level, is it's science. It's fact. It is not, take these premises, you will get these conclusions. The question is exactly what premises are you putting into it. But if you're just ignoring this chain of thought, then altogether, then you'll end up sounding very economically illiterate.
I do love taking just to the logical conclusion of just killing people. Like you'd always bring it to the extreme of just, yeah. But if I do what's best for me, if that's all we're looking at, it is just individuals, nihilists with no greater purpose or plan in life, and it's all just about, some sort of hedonism or, utilitarianism. It's like, yeah, I just need to start killing people is what you're telling me. People
Does
in
kind of
chat are
end up
saying
there,
this
yeah.
Yeah. Well, you just draw it all the way to the end, right? You're like, okay, so if it's all about personal maximizing, it's like, well, I mean, we can go to pretty crazy lengths. What's to stop me from doing that, right? If not some sort of force structure. It all comes down to force.
All right. So that's another thing that I'll talk about briefly, that I won't even really go into this, but one thing that a lot of people don't understand when they talk about economics is the distinction between different types of goods. This is something that's worth knowing about, again, if you're going to engage in any kind of economic discussion. There are, broadly speaking, 4 types of goods, right? John, you probably remember this, but you've got your private goods, you have your... You don't remember this? Well, then we should pull that up real quick. The 4 types of goods. Let me pull up an illustration because it's definitely more easily visually consumed. Goods in economics. All right, let me share.
First off, only God is good, by the way. So there's one type of good. Go ahead and jot that down, okay? They didn't teach you that in economics class.
Absolutely correct. But also,
anyways,
yeah, right. All right, so here we go. There's different names for these, but can I make this bigger? Come on.
Dude, I've tried for the last couple decades and it just hasn't worked.
Whatever. All right, can you guys see this?
Yep.
All right. So yes, you've got these four categories, this matrix here. We have excludable and non-excludable, and rivalrous and non-rivalrous. Excludable means can you keep people from it? An example would be your house. Hopefully you can exclude people. A non-excludable would be something like air. I can't prevent John from breathing oxygen, so it'd be very hard to charge him for oxygen. I guess there are technically ways, but
Dude, they're working on
There
that.
are
They're
carbon
working on that, bro.
taxes that are in, yeah.
well, that's true.
Actually, no. Did you guys know that there was a company sending canned air to places like was it Beijing or Taiwan where you can buy canned air because of how bad the natural air quality is there?
It's not
So they
polluted.
would bottle air in like the Himalayas, and people would take it, I guess, as like a hit of clean air. So no, you can't actually sell canned air. It's real.
There you go. My professor, in response to this comment, was actually Scottish, and he looked very much like Albert Einstein. It was a very funny combination. The Scottish Albert
people
Einstein.
are the Jews of the Anglos, though, to be fair. They're notorious. They're notoriously stingy, okay? And as a Scottish man myself, I agree with that.
There you go.
The Jews of the Isles.
They do have a long history in economics, believe it or not. All right. So, rivalrous. Rivalrous means can you basically does one person consuming it prevent someone else from consuming it, right? If I have a cookie and I eat that cookie, John cannot eat that cookie unless he punches me and I barf it up and then he eats it, which he really wouldn't want to. So
it's no longer a cookie, okay?
at that point it's just some weird
accidents
pride
may be there,
activity.
but the substance has changed.
Yeah. All right. So a cookie is rivalrous. You can and excludable, right? You could potentially, I can swat your hand away and say, no, touchy. That's my cookie. And I could, and if I consume it, it prevents someone else from consuming it. So that is rivalrous and excludable. All right. So these are called private goods. If it is rivalrous and consumable, you have food, clothing, cars, personal electronics. Great examples. If something is rivalrous and non-excludable, then that's called a common good. Things like fish, stocks, timber, coal. Now, of course, in some cases, is it fish stocks? There's no common there. Fish is one of those things that you could have a private lake that you excluded people from. So, there's some gray areas here, but assuming you've got like a community, or you've got a river or something like that runs through multiple private lands, the fish in that are going to be non-excludable. You can't ultimately prevent someone else from fishing in that stream. All right, rivalrous and excludable are called club goods. This would be, cinemas, private parks, satellite TV would be another example, or an actual just club, like a private club or a cigar lounge or something like that. It is technically non-rivalrous to a point, right, where at some point you have a max occupancy of a particular area, but basically a gym would be another great example, where basically if you have 100 people on the rolls, and as long as they come at somewhat staggered times, one person being there is not really inhibiting the other person from being there, and so those sorts of things would be called club goods. They're excludable but non-rivalrous. And then finally, if you have something that is non-excludable and non-rivalrous, it's considered a public good. Things like air and national defense. You can't, if the country has an army, then you have, if you have someone in the country that's like, I don't want to pay for the army, I'm not going to pay a dime of my money towards the military. It's like, sure, you can say that, but you still get the benefits of the army being there to protect you. So, this is the free rider problem. This is another concept that comes out of this discussion around goods. Free riders are people that take advantage of the goods without paying for them. So the free rider problem, as well as some other issues, are why this conversation helps when it comes to determining where the government should step in. So generally speaking, the government is really, really bad at stepping into excludable and rivalrous goods, right? And there's private goods. Private goods should generally not be handled or have intervention from the government. Common goods and common goods, there's potentially some amount of government intervention is helpful. But not as much as private goods. You kind of have to weigh the options there. And the same with club goods. That's going to be one of those that generally can be handled pretty well by the free market. But potentially there might be some legislations that you need there. And then public goods, you need the government to step in. Things like clean air. If you have pollutants, you really do need the government to step in and prevent one company on its land just pumping horrible air into the surrounding areas or polluting the water that's flowing downstream. That's going to be something that you want the government to actually step in and start to regulate. So basically, this helps in assessing first what kind of good are we talking about, and then how much government intervention is actually going to help. And how much of it might be more hurtful. When you see government intervening in private goods, generally speaking, that's going to be less helpful. Now, again, if they're intervening for the sake of upholding the actual freedom of the system, then that can be advantageous. Or things like prostitution. Prostitution is, I guess, technically that would be technically non-rivalrous. So I guess prostitution would be a club good. But I don't know. Anyways, the point is prostitution should be illegal for all kinds of reasons because ultimately it degrades the overall system, and there are other concerns. So you can't just take this as like the Bible. This is what determines whether or not the government should be interacting with it. But if you don't account for this at all, again, you'll be economically illiterate. It is worth taking this into account when you are trying to discuss government intervention. Sorry, I spent more time on that than I wanted to, but it's a worthwhile conversation. If you've never seen this before, take it to your next libertarian meeting, because a lot of libertarians don't even realize that this exists, and so they'll just say like any government intervention is bad, and it's like no, pretty much all economists agree that in the case of public goods, you need government intervention. We can debate about some of the other goods, but in the case of public goods, at the very least, you need the government. So that at least refutes your anarchists. Any thoughts on that? John, you surely you studied that.
I mean, I'm sure that I did at some point, but I mean, my Econ 101 class was like 12 years ago at this point, man. So it's been a minute, and these concepts aren't like something I use every day. So I mean, like, I get what you're saying, but I feel like not to be rude, but I feel like we should be putting this back towards like the Christian paradigm of how we interact with economics, because it seems more like a basic economics lesson. Like this seems like a great lecture.
Right. Fair enough. I agree. I just wanted to lay that groundwork. So then from there, the next question is, when you deal with certain questions that have been opined on by the church, things like interest and usury. This is kind of a hot topic. Is charging interest on debt a legitimate thing? People have different opinions. The modern consensus, certainly within the Catholic Church, and I think probably within the Orthodox Church, again, I'm not as familiar with their overall view, but I doubt that they universally condemn engaging in interest contracts. And certainly within the Protestant Church, has been that the medieval view of usury and interest being one and the same is not correct. However, in medieval times, banks did have to rely on all kinds of other mechanisms for getting money from their lending activities, like fees and things like that. But they weren't allowed to charge interest because interest was considered equivalent to usury. Usury, an old-fashioned term that again became synonymous with interest, but really probably has more of a abuse aspect to it, component that really should be intrinsic to the act if you're going to call it usury, not just any kind of interest being usury. John, seems like you've thought about this a little bit.
Well, I think it is a much more complex topic than what people initially assume, because I think a lot of people in the chat are going to be like, oh, just ban all quote unquote usury or interest outright. But the history of the church and the history of like the Old Testament and the New Testament is a little more complicated. I was just listening to, because I wanted to, for this specifically, I wanted to hear more of the Orthodox perspective on usury. So I actually listened to like a 2-hour podcast, or most of the 2-hour podcast today on Orthodox usury. And it's It's almost like a case by case basis. So there were times throughout the Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, where usury was outright banned in terms of loaning with interest, right? They banned a certain types of people from certain positions and whatnot. But then there were also times where usury is allowed in sort of a good debt or constructive sort of circumstance. So, for instance, if somebody wanted to start a business, you are allowed to loan with interest from certain people at certain times, and that's considered quote unquote kosher. There are other times where if you're loaning with interest to an individual within the church, that's like banned. That you can't do.
Mhm.
Absolutely can't do that. You should not do that. You should not charge interest on like your friend for personal reasons, right? So outside of like usury on frivolous things is almost universally condemned. Usury on businesses or on expansions or on things where, there just isn't enough capital on hand to get done, but has some sort of public interest of the church, interest of the state, that can be allowed with exception. So, for instance, like, could I, for my business, put down interest on a work truck? Yes, you could do that sort of lending, and that would be kosher. Could I do the same for a sports car for personal use? No, that would not be allowed, or that would not be proper, right? To do the same sort of thing there, right? Different contexts. Sometimes it is allowed, sometimes it's not. It's not as simple as just wholeheartedly banned. Obviously, I mean, there's times in scripture where Christ is using interest in a parable, right? Hey, if you had just given this money that I lent you to the bankers, then, I would have come away with more than I had before. So it can't be wholeheartedly bad because it's like Christ using an analogy about prostitution. He never did, right? Because that would be wrong in every circumstance.
Right.
But obviously usury or lending or interest can't be holistically bad, even if it is prudentially bad in most circumstances. Right. And so I think there is a delineation between good debt, bad debt, debt with a purpose versus debt for personal, self-interest, right? So I think it would be morally wrong for me to loan with interest to a friend, maybe, a fee, or, there might be certain ways to get around that. I wouldn't loan with interest to a child. There's lots of times where I think that would be morally wrong, but it is kind of a case by case basis. It's not as cut and dry as people would like.
It's a case by case basis. And this is an important point, is that when you're talking about these things, it's like, are there opportunities to sin in otherwise legitimate and fine activities? Yeah, pretty much always. The answer is yes. There are always ways to be sinful in otherwise legitimate and perfectly, kosher activities. The issue, I don't know that it's as simple as distinguishing between, like, business use or personal use, because even if you loan money to a friend, I think that there are plenty of times where it would be wrong to charge interest, but not necessarily. Especially.
Well, could you just provide a hypothetical in which you would be comfortable in loaning with interest to a friend?
Well, I mean, I suppose if a friend was asking for the money
curious.
for business, I think the moral,
Oh, sure, but even that would be a legitimate means, though, right?
I suppose so. I think the bigger question is, I'm thinking personally, if I was to take out a loan for a particular for something that was more frivolous, but I wanted to accept a contract that allowed for that has interest. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that. And if I was to do that from a friend, I don't think there'd be anything inherently wrong with that either, right? And so if I was to do that for a friend, I don't think that would be inherently an issue. I mean, what if I owned a bank and a friend came to me, that wouldn't, and he wanted to buy a car and wanted to do some financing?
Well, would you put your friend in a negative position, though? Wouldn't that be immoral? Like, would you be a good friend to your friend in a bad financial situation, or to allow him to make poor financial decisions, right? Because when
No,
you
that-
do
that
that,
would be a
when you're
problem.
lending
However-
when you're lending to your friend for a frivolous reason, like you're the one now co-signing his actions.
Yeah,
you know,
if he is
right?
committing a something that I would view as a sin, then obviously participating or enabling that would be a problem. However, using interest as a mechanism to finance something that is not, essential to life or is primarily for pleasure purposes, like a car or something, I struggle to see where that would be inherently wrong. I think the assumption that you're making is that doing so with some kind of financing would be inherently issue. Now, I have no debt. I've always paid for my cars out of cash. I currently rent, but eventually I probably will take on a mortgage, but largely because I'm very good at outpacing in terms of what I'm able to do with the cash that I have at hand. I can outpace the interest that I would be paying on a mortgage. So I'd be willing to take on a certain amount of debt because of the distinction between good debt and bad debt. And this is one of those things that requires a little bit of nuance because different people have different definitions of what is good debt and what is bad debt. But to quickly answer your question, if my friend was coming to me with a proposition that did not seem like bad debt and did not put him in a sort of a debt slavery to me, then I would not necessarily have an issue. Now, I might just have personal issues with like lending to a friend that's just uncomfortable for a number of reasons. At interest with that kind of that creates all kinds of issues if he doesn't pay and stuff. Like whereas I might be willing to just give it to him or give him a certain amount of money and don't worry about the interest. I think that is much wiser just on a personal relationship perspective. But if it's something that is not going to put him, if we both think, yeah, this is advantageous, this makes sense, even if it's for something that's more pleasure oriented and not specifically business, I think that could be absolutely acceptable. If I have a certain asset that's helpful and he wants to take advantage of that position, and I think it's going to be overall helpful to both of us, which debt can be, right? This is the distinction between good debt and bad debt that we can get into in a second, even for pleasure uses, then I think it would be totally acceptable for me to engage in that type of financing with a friend, hypothetically. So what is your idea of bad debt? What is bad debt to you, John?
Well, so I think I'm taking it more of a idealistic circumstance, right? Where because I have more than just a duty to material goods or to my own personal pleasures, I do not see any sort of benefit personally. Like, let's take the friend out of the equation. If I were to take on debt to, again, let's just take the fancy car analogy, because I personally want a fancy car.
Sure.
I think in a lot of ways that is immoral for me to do that because I have a wife and family. And if I am sinking money that I do not have to engage in a frivolous lifestyle when I should be doing other things with that money, right? Because I do think that we have a duty to God, we have a duty to church, we have a duty to our family, right? So I struggle to see
I
in
agree.
an ideal world where I would do that. And then when we add the friend element into it, it's like that is such treacherous waters that prudentially I would not want to put myself in that situation with a friend, right? Because I know that can just go sideways.
I understand
Right.
the context now to see where you're coming from. However, I think there's a flaw in the assumptions there that you are equating being in debt with spending money that you do not have. That is not actually required
So,
for a debt
well, here's the
relationship.
thing, right? If my friend is a millionaire and I loaned him $10,000, it's like, yeah, you could do that, I guess, and it's not
Well,
putting
there
him
are
in any
there are
sort of
great
financial
reasons
danger.
to do that. That's what I'm trying to say.
I'm sure there are weird scenarios like
It's
that.
not
but I'm
weird
thinking
at
more of,
all.
Like my own. That
This is-
seems weird.
this
Okay,
is-
if you're
let me
if
explain it
you're
to you.
millionaires loaning tens of thousands of dollars to your friends, I think you're in a weird you're in a tax bracket that I'm not a part of. Okay, I think that's strange.
Well,
That's not the
this
normal
is key
experience.
to my understanding of good debt versus bad debt. So, if you are truly spending money that you do not have, living beyond your means, purchasing, I mean, living beyond your means is a good sub in for this whole concept, basically. Then that is a problem. However, let's say I have $60,000 and I want to buy a, just this isn't the entirety of what I have, but let's just say I have this much and I want to buy a $50,000 car, and I'm buying it new or whatever. That's very expensive. I've never even come close to buying a car that expensive. But all my cars have been less than 10 grand. But let's say I wanted to do that, and I have this money set aside, this $60,000. So I could just pay for it in cash. However, the interest rate on that car is like 5%. And I know that I could use that $60,000, invest it in the market, which we can get to in a second. That's a whole separate question of whether or not investing in the market is moral. But let's say I could do that, or in non controversial things, like I could through my business, I could invest that $6,000 and make a return on investment of 10%. It does me no service to take that cash out of my possession, put it in the possession of the car salesperson, when I could be making an additional 5% on that cash while it's in my possession. And so going into debt in that case, I'm not spending money I don't have, but I am engaging in a debt relationship. That is good debt.
I will just grant you that circumstance for you, just wholeheartedly. But we both know that is not the way that people operate in general when it comes to debt. So that is the polar opposite.
That's a problem.
Of how people
but
operate.
that is how I operate. That is how business people operate.
When we're talking about debt, when I'm talking about it in a very general sense, I'm like, this is super dangerous. And the average person who holds I don't know what the average American holds, like $12,000 in credit card debt or something like that. It's like when I say usury and debt is generally speaking bad, I'm talking to the average person who is having these issues, right? If you're a level above that, doing that sort of thing, James, I'll just grant you that that's fine because you're kind of just operating within the system and you're actually using it to your advantage in a very, what's the word that I'm not prudential, but like in a business savvy sense, right? You're being a good steward of the money that you have. So in that context, you're actually doing a good thing with the money that you have by not allowing it to go to waste, right? But that is not where the average person is. So when I'm talking to a wide audience or to the average person, I'm going to be like, yeah, you need to limit your usage as much as possible and not spend on frivolous things like this, But I'll grant you that there are exceptions in your specific case,
What I'm describing is not an unusual scenario. This is an extremely common use of debt. I understand that there are
No, I can't believe that. Maybe for people who are really good with money, but I would be shocked if the average person was particularly good with money.
Fair enough.
I think we run a different circle. If you think that is a normal use of debt, I don't know.
Well, it is absolutely a normal use of debt in terms of business. This is the business calculation that you take on when you take on debt. I mean, unless you're just shooting for the stars, which I don't know, can't. In many ways, I would consider that to be, even if it is in the context of a business where I think this business can take off, but you're borrowing money that you just do not have and really can't guarantee, and you're shooting for you're just hoping that your business works. I think that can be very immoral and illegitimate.
Well, here's the thing.
It can be okay, but
long shot. So in that idea, if somebody is actually, because sure, if I was given $1 gazillion, I could probably start up a bunch of different businesses and do things that I wanted to do, right? But what we see, average person gets given a lump sum of money, it does not go well, right? The average person who gets into debt, who gets given money, does not go well for them. People, when I think of it, I think the lowest common denominator, which is what we kind of have to run off of as a society, or what we should push for, is the general rule, not the exception.
But not what you should teach your kids.
Should not. Of course not. Of course not. Right. But we have to realize that society is not this way, right? So now, to your point, given decades or generations of, reorienting ourselves to be wise, judicial, prudential with our money, and to be a less, frivolous, debt-focused society, and talking about how to use these things differently, we could possibly change that in the future, but that doesn't seem like the here and now. So, for instance, prudentially, if we were to incentivize everybody needs to go out there, take out $1 million loan and start a business. Like I think we're lined up here. Probably 80% or more of those businesses fail. And people end up with debt. Like I think that's just a truism is that most businesses fail.
Yes, but that doesn't mean
Right.
that most people that start businesses fail, right? In theory, a business could fail, but the person could be paying himself a salary from that business, and so he could actually be doing just fine. The business starter does not necessarily
possible.
fail. So usually entrepreneurs will start multiple businesses, and yes, 80% might fail, but he's actually doing okay the whole time, or at least just making it, and then eventually he finds the one that does make it, and then does okay. So that's where that stat gets
Possible.
twisted, kind of like with divorce. Like people say 50% of marriages end in divorce, but they're not accounting for the fact
Right.
there's a lot of repeat divorces and stuff. So there are ways to skew
Right.
that stat, but I understand your point.
That's possible, but I still think that the vast majority of society is not equipped to be that sort of entrepreneur. Okay, America has
Fair enough.
always had that entrepreneurial spirit, but I think the vast, like even in like think about any sort of industrial revolution, the vast majority of people have been the blue collar working class, right? That's always been the backbone. People starting businesses, you want them to have the ability to do so, but you also don't want to just be pushing people into dangerous waters, right? Because anytime you take on debt, anytime you take these risks, it's good to have the opportunity to do so, but we don't want to be pushing every single person into that path, right?
So I think the key thing that I would say is that my definition of good debt versus bad debt, and there are more technical definitions that you'll find, but from what I can tell, the best definition is: are you engaging in some kind of debt that puts you in a sort of bondage to your lender, or are you engaged in something that doesn't? Right? I mean, that is the biggest thing to me, whether or not I would personally be willing to engage in debt. And I think a big distinction. There may be times where it is morally acceptable to put yourself in a sort of temporary indentured servitude to your lender for those long shots that you really think will pay off, and you're just believing in yourself and you're willing to put up with it for a few years. I mean, I think that's risky. That goes against my sort of conservative mentality. I think it could be morally acceptable, but it certainly, if not done prudentially, could be very morally bad. So that, to me, is the difference between good debt and bad debt. Are you putting yourself in bondage to someone? But it's important to note that not all debt necessarily puts you in bondage to your lender. So I gave you the example of when you have the money to spend, but you decide to go with debt because your interest rate outpaces the interest rate that you're paying. It's a very common example in terms of how businesses will borrow, in terms of how individuals will borrow, even if you are savvy in the market. But not perhaps not common to your blue collar person who doesn't really have a great personal return on investment. So that's fine. There are other cases where this holds too. It's not just in that case where you already have the money, but things like mortgages. This is why people that are very anti-debt, even like Dave Ramsey, will still allow for some debt in the case of buying a house, things like that, because this is another example where you're not actually putting yourself necessarily in bondage to your lender. If you put down a sufficient down payment, if you are doing this well and you have a low enough interest rate, or you calculate it so that it works, you are trading one asset, cash, your down payment, and then your continuing payments, for another asset, the house. And if you're looking at in accounting, we talk about your assets and your liabilities and your equity. Basically, you're trading an asset plus some liability, right? So whatever cash you put down, the down payment, plus the debt that you now have, and assets plus liabilities always equals equity. That's the balance statement concept. You're trading the down payment, the asset, plus the liability, the debt that you're taking on, for the equity, the house, which in some sense actually becomes another asset. And now I'm getting confused. It's been a while to take an accounting, but basically, your overall economic situation doesn't necessarily change as long as your house is somewhat liquid. As long as you can still sell your house, you can now actually get out of that situation, and so you're not actually in bondage. Now there are cases where it can be complicated, and you can be putting yourself at risk. There's risk involved, but if the risk is low enough, then potentially you can make that kind of decision, and you ultimately you are most likely, assuming you're not living well beyond your means, you're not going into debt that is exorbitant, and you are keeping the interest rates or the interest payments, the money that's just complete expenses that is not actually contributing to the principal. If you are able to keep that those expenses somewhat low, then you can do so in a prudent way that does not actually put you in servitude to your lender, and that would be another example of good debt, or at least acceptable debt. And so this is an important distinction between good debt and bad debt. And I think too many people, when they're teaching their kids about finances, basically just say debt bad, always. And it actually leads them to not necessarily, it can make them financially responsible in one sense, in the sense that they don't go into debt, which is probably better than if they had not received any teaching at all, and just gotten wildly into credit card debt. But it can actually lead them to not be as financially responsible as they could be if they understood the concept of good debt and how to pursue that. And that's what I'm trying to encourage people, is to actually look into what good debt is and how to use it well. And I think people can dumb down this conversation, speaking to the lowest common denominator, but when you're talking to your kids, hopefully that's not the lowest common denominator. And when you're talking even, when you have a show where you can opine on philosophy and religion and theology and all that, then we can talk about these things in a slightly more nuanced way and assume that our audience is not the lowest common denominator, and actually talk about the occasions for good debt. And I think that's really, really important to financial wisdom.
When it comes to money, or cash, as it were, like, it's nothing more than a store of value. So when you're talking about buying a house, you're essentially just swapping forms of stores of value, right? Because your cash is subject to inflation. Your cash is literally going down in value every single year. It's worth less and less. So you're actually losing money by keeping the cash on hand. So I totally get switching cash for assets. A house is an asset. Whether it's precious metals or other things, typically have a better return than cash does, right? So I do think that there is some truth to that. But then, your risk to reward is a little bit different there, because if you are able to buy a house at a decent interest rate, your interest rate might even be less than the inflation rate. So you're like, regardless of whatever is going on in terms of how much down payment you have, you actually might be just making money purely off the inflation
Which
rate.
would be an example of what I was saying earlier. That actually happens.
Oh, it does all the time. Well, somebody in
Right.
Doc, he says he has a 2.3% interest rate on his house, which is lower than
That would be a
inflation.
very
So it's
common example
actually-
of what I was describing earlier, where it's like your return on interest, your personal return on interest, with very little extra work, actually outpaces the interest on your debt.
Well, and this is a larger problem that comes to currency manipulation and the issues therein, because I think that our economy and the way that our world works is kind of an evil system, right? There's this facade of attempting to have some sort of currency stability, but I think that inflation and a lot of these programs, or a lot of these geopolitical games, are designed to weaken the average person's financial situation, right? They don't want a strong middle class. Which is why the middle class continuously gets hollowed out, why cash gets devalued, why everything gets more and more expensive over time. And so I do think that it is a good idea to put cash in a place. You're asset swapping, essentially, from just straight cash to something else, so that you can actually hold value. But it's in the context of a bad, broken system, right? If that makes sense. Right. It's in the context of, well, they're devaluing your cash, so you have to put it somewhere else. This
Well,
is
I mean,
good.
are you
Not
saying that
necessarily like this
inflation
the
is
ideal
inherently a
system.
bad system?
I think currency manipulation is almost certainly immoral.
Currency manipulation, sure.
Well, because if you're telling your people, like from a government level, you're telling your people, hey, this is what the currency is, blah blah blah, and then tomorrow you do something that lowers the value for your entire nation because it, I don't know, helps you fund your own government debt. It's like, well, that's problematic.
Well,
right?
I mean,
That's not helpful.
deflation is bad for the system if you're assuming the system is a nation, right? Deflation is bad for an economy, right?
I mean, it can be problematic for. It's like, yeah, losing workers can be bad for an economy, but it doesn't mean that it's like, well, you have no other option than to leave 100 million people in the country that shouldn't be here, right? There are short-term consequences for deflation and inflation. It
Right.
it seems most presidents, most people in America at least, they've been very scared of deflation, right? Because they don't want to upset the market, but that doesn't mean
Well,
it's
yeah.
inherently bad.
Let me
right?
just
There's
quickly
going to be
clarify
short-term
why
disruptions
deflation
either way it goes.
why deflation in theory is bad. Deflation is when your money is going up as time goes on. The reason why that generally is bad for the economy as a a whole system is that you are more likely to keep your money if it's increasing in value than to spend it, and spending is what drives an economy. You want to have more of these transactions because those are how the overall value increases. Like what I was explaining earlier, every
But again,
transaction
even
increases
then,
the overall value of the
deflation
system.
can only be right. Deflation can only be temporary, right?
Right,
It can't
exactly,
go on forever because
exactly.
at some point something has to give and then it flips around.
Exactly.
Same thing like
So
in an inflation-based economy, it's cheap to lend, so people lend, which leads to the things that we're looking at now, right? So there is no like perfect system. The ideal scenario would be to have a currency that is stable, right? Less than 1% swing either direction year over year would be fantastic.
Sure.
But that's not really the world that we live in.
Yeah. I mean, 2% isn't that crazy, but yeah. I mean, I think that generally speaking, anything beyond 2% in either direction is gets rough.
Well, I think if there is some sort of social event in America or any country, you'll see short-term deflation right after it. You just will, right? Anytime there's a mass amount of people moving, it just happens, right?
Sure. Yeah. So let's see. I guess moving to a new topic of some controversy. So the stock market is kind of a hot topic. I've seen debates on Catholic forums about whether or not it's okay to invest in the market, or even things like day trading being considered immoral because there's no actual like work being done. You're just kind of playing with numbers, and people will say that that's inherently immoral. I'll lay my cards on the table. I currently do day trading as my means of making income. And that is, I will tell you why it is, in my view, well, there are a number of reasons why it's not immoral. Primarily because you're simply engaging in these kinds of free transactions. It's no more immoral than if you buy something on eBay for one price and then sell it at a slightly higher price. It's just called arbitrage. That's essentially what day trading is. You're engaging in stock arbitrage, and that's, you are actually providing a service to the system at large when you do that on eBay or when you do that in the stock market. And the service you are providing is liquidity, which actually does increase the value of the individual stocks within the system. In other words, the reason why you can go on a stock exchange right now and sell a stock instantaneously for whatever the current price is because there's a bunch of traders, retail traders, institutional traders, who are willing to buy that stock at whatever that current price is because they're hoping to make a little profit off of this constant arbitrage. In other words, having a lot of people engaging in these transactions helps to, one, find the true price of it, right? Because value, or the true value, I should say, and price is a stand-in for value. Value is not an intrinsic thing. It's one of those relative things. And so having a lot of people engaging in the market actually helps us find that correct price or value. So it provides that service, but then it also provides a service of liquidity, which is why, a stock is in many ways more valuable to you to hold than like an art piece, which is going to be much less liquid. It might take you a year or 5 years or 20 years to find a buyer that will buy it at the actual, at the standard agreed upon value. You might have a piece of art that is, all the professionals and the experts will say this should be a $1 million art piece, but if you need to sell it tomorrow, you're not going to be able to fetch $1 million for it, most likely, right? And so you, by having a lot of people engage in this kind of arbitrage, you actually do increase the liquidity, which adds value to your life. If you had that kind of a market with art, which in some cases you might, then it actually allows you to get the full the proper price, rather than being, when you come into you all of a sudden need a lot of money, need to sell that, to exchange that asset for the other asset of cash. You're not getting raked over the coals and taking a much lower price than you otherwise would want to. So that's the benefit that day traders generally, or people that engage in arbitrage, whether it's on a daily basis or a longer term basis, that they provide to the system when you try to profit from capital gains. That actually does add value to the system overall, and it requires a lot of work. It is actual work that goes into it. So I'm completely unconvinced by the arguments that is somehow inherently immoral. I think to make that case, you have to make a case that all kinds of other free transactions are immoral on their face, which most people who argue against day trading would not be willing to admit to. And so I think when you just actually break down what is really going on, it's a perfectly acceptable way to go about things. Are there ways to go about it incorrectly and sinfully? Absolutely, like in pretty much every otherwise legitimate activity, as I was saying earlier. So I've laid my cards on the table. John, Christian, have you guys thought about trading or the stock market? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I get what you're saying about the stock market, and there's a part of me that likes the idea of being able to invest and to provide capital for companies to use, and then you, of course, you get to reap the rewards of your investment. There's your risk, there's your reward right there. When it comes to stuff like day trading, and I'm just trying to think of what the counter argument would be, because you have your eBay analogy, but do you think that by engaging in the system in such a temporal fashion that you are actually contributing to the inflation of a lot of these stock prices? And do you think that that negatively affects the rest of the market by your like short-term profit maximization? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it can in the short term, but only because of the, what economist Keynes would have called the animal spirits of the market. But basically, because you have so many people invested in it, or involved in the transactions, committing the transactions, and because stocks are so intangible in terms of actually assessing the true value, because you're trying to guess on future returns of the business, it's a very hard thing to price. You can make mistakes in the short run, but in the long run, it is actually more advantageous to have lots of people invested in it, or involved in it. I'm saying invested in the sense of like investing your time in it. And literally invested in it, but because it does in the long run actually help to get to the true price and or value of the stock. And it is tricky because you're dealing with something that is so intangible. The more tangible the thing, the more kind of objective you can make the price. But when it comes to stocks, it's a very hard to price product, and so that's why you have all kinds of issues. But I think that it doesn't contribute inherently to inflation. I think that those actually are separate things. It can, if you have a rush on a particular stock, it can shoot the stock up well beyond what we would think is the value of it. But every person that engages in that transaction freely is saying, I think this stock could be worth this amount or more, right? If they buy the stock, then they're assuming that it could be worth more. And so they are freely engaged in that transaction. I don't see anything immoral in that, in the individual transaction.
Freely engaging in it can't be an argument for morality, right? If I freely engage in a prostitution transaction where we're all bidding on certain whores, like that's not a moral transaction just because we're all freely bidding on her, right? Question though, when it comes to that, what about crypto pump and dump, right? Because crypto's even more intangible than like a stock, because at least a stock is like theoretically tied to a company that does something somewhere and somebody's holding the bag. But like we see a lot of this in the crypto space where there's a new coin that does, I don't even know what they do. Okay. They're just like based off of algorithms or something, funny numbers. But where you see this like pump and dump scheme where it's
Yeah.
kind of like a day trading, but you're trying to just ride the wave. So would you consider like pump and dump crypto scams to be
Scams
immoral?
are immoral, you know,
right
on their
but
face, right?
are
A
there
scam is
certain
moral.
transactions? Well, right, but if you're like betting in a certain way that you know this stock is going to shoot up in value and then you sell before it inevitably crashes, isn't that similar
Yeah,
in the
could
same
be.
vein?
Could be. I would think that that's, yeah, I mean, that's not, I think that that absolutely could be immoral. It could be, yeah, a way to try to profit off of some bad systems, which I think could be immoral. It's not the kind of stocks that I trade in, but I think that, yeah, I think you could be, the main issue that I would have with that, apart from if you knew that there were systemic issues, then that's, you know, something that you should consider morally. But also, if, on a personal level, I think you could be engaging in very imprudent behavior if you are engaging in just rank speculation. I think speculation is just like gambling. When you are, you know, investing in something that you really are just hoping is going to go up in value, sort of out of you know, a sense, out of no real valuation. And no real, you know, method. I think that can be really imprudent and therefore sinful. So I think you'd have multiple sins that could potentially be coming into that, but and there may be valid. There certainly are valid ways where the government should try to help to craft the system in such a way that it is not as rife for abuse, rife with abuse, ripe for abuse. The challenge comes in when you try to restrict at a individual level what are otherwise legitimate transactions because of the possibility of some abuse. You come into all kinds of prudential and practical issues. Where, like, if you were to say that engaging in stock transactions are immoral because some people might try to do pump and dump schemes, then you know that is probably an illegitimate use of government. You should do what you can to avoid pump and dump schemes, and insider trading is wrong and immoral. Pumping and dumping is wrong and immoral. Like there are issues within this, but to condemn the overall mechanism that allows for those abuses is an overstepping of, you know, government if they're getting involved in a way that is overstepping. And even in terms of your more moral calculations, if you're saying that because there is the possibility of some people engaging in this abuse, I'm not going to let anyone engage in the legitimate activity, you know, that becomes a serious prudential issue. If the abuse becomes so prominent, where that is the primary use of this particular thing, then yeah, you're right. Maybe just close down the market. Maybe the market isn't actually contributing to society. I'm willing to just hear those types of cases. But if you can, but I don't think that you should let the potential for abuse rule.
Of course, right.
You know, yeah, abolish the activity altogether.
Right. So, but you think your argument is that the true value add, what you're doing to benefit other people by your actions, is not it's not just making money out of the ether, but is providing liquidity. Right. That's the positive argument.
Yeah, and you really do not know the value of stocks. I mean, you are betting on the future value of something, and there are enough people involved.
Is day trading just betting? Just gambling on a more sophisticated level, I guess, maybe.
No, it's not. It's not.
I mean, you did say betting. You know, I know you're maybe not
Yes,
using that in the same
colloquially,
context.
you are betting on something to go up in the same way that if you buy something on eBay, you are betting that you can sell it at a higher price. I just mean betting in the sense that you are making a probabilistic calculation in your head. So different, same word, different concept. But No, there is a difference between investing and speculating, and day trading is not your traditional investing. It is more just profiting off of arbitrage, which is different from investing. Arbitrage and investing are different concepts, but arbitrage does not need to be purely speculative. Arbitrage does not need to be. It also doesn't need to be purely, investing based, where you're looking at sort of the underlying financials of a company. You are just trying to profit off of the small fluctuations that are intrinsic to a price setting mechanism, that is the stock market, where you have a lot of people engaged in the transactions. So arbitrage, investing, speculating, three different concepts. And I think that speculating can be immoral, isn't necessarily immoral. I'm not an anti-gambling in principle person, but I do think that it certainly can be personally sinful if you are gambling with money that you don't have, certainly, or if you're just being unwise in your gambling. I think that there are some cases where gambling can be just fine. If you're playing poker with the boys or whatever, I think that can be fun and totally fine. And even speculating occasionally on stocks can be totally fine. But if you're doing so in a way that is unwise, imprudent, or potentially has some other larger ramifications, like something that essentially results in a pump and dump type of thing, then you can, that could result in some moral qualms and issues.
Right. I mean, I guess I do see it in the same way as on a low level, right? I see it on the same way as like gambling would be in the Middle Ages, and why it was banned in a lot of places is because you would get essentially sharks coming through, and then they would take all of the money from all of your parish and whatnot. And it's like, okay, well, this can't be done. They're obviously just
Right.
engaged in some sort of deceptive practice, and because of the abuse is so widespread, we are just going to ban the practice outright to protect our people who are rather stupid and uninformed and being taken advantage of in a new way, right? So there's that sort
Right.
of protection mindset. I mean, I don't really have strong feelings on day trading one way or the other, or really the stock market. I only hold one stock, and it's a meme stock. Uh, it's like it's so for me, I don't really have much input one way or the other. I think it's interesting, but not something I've ever delved into.
Right. Christian, what about you?
Christian, what about you?
I am not in any stocks. I don't do any trading. I do have a mortgage that I make balloon payments on to try to pay off as soon as I can, and that's the basis of my financial situation. So, don't really plan on getting into stocks. Don't really care for stocks. So,
Yeah, fair enough.
just trying to pay off my debt. That's it.
Yeah,
I
I think
will
it's
say
another
that
one of those areas where, for the uninformed, can be unwise to just jump into without foreknowledge or training or information.
I totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think
Much
that
like
it takes
for the average person, I don't recommend frequenting a casino.
right.
Probably a bad idea.
I will say, for anyone interested in day trading or stock trading, the biggest thing that you need is experience. So if you want, and you can start as small as you want, basically, especially with things like Robinhood, where you can do partial stocks and stuff. You can develop an edge, a trading edge, where you find your little niche of the market that you are able to get consistent returns on by trading small amounts, and develop that edge over a long period of time. That is absolutely doable. That is what I did. I traded part-time with small amounts of money for about 10 years if you're being conservative, but really 5 years kind of seriously tracking every transaction and everything before I actually kind of jumped ship and went into that full-time, which is what I do now. And so that is the biggest thing that you need, is experience, and you do want to start small. And even anytime you make a change to your strategy, you want to start small. You do not want to jump into any new strategy or activity with all of your funds. So you want to start small, get experience. Perspective is a trader's best friend. But that is the barrier to entry, is perspective. If you don't have any perspective, you will almost certainly get burned. But if you want to do this, it's something that you can start small, get your perspective, do it for a few months, few years, and you will get the perspective that actually allows you to be profitable in this. And a lack of experience is the biggest thing that intimidates people away from doing this. But all in all, You don't have to be a math genius. You don't have to be a quant. You don't have to be a wizard with this stuff to do it in a profitable fashion. The biggest thing that turns people away from stocks is just lack of experience. They're just intimidated by it because they've never done it, or they get burned once or twice because the stock goes down, and they cash out too early because they get scared or whatever, and so they stop because it didn't work out. Whatever they were trying didn't work, and so they move on, or maybe they went in with too much money at the outset. But my advice is, if this is something that interests you, and I'm not saying that it's for everyone, but start small, get your perspective, and when you get burned, see that as a learning opportunity. Take $1,000, take $500, put it in the market, and expect to lose all of it. You probably won't. There are plenty of ways not to. It's very hard, actually, to lose all of it if you are unless you're trying to, and just but be willing to lose all of it, right? That's part of what it means to live within your means. Be willing to put it all at risk, and see it as a learning experience. See it as $500 invested in you understanding the market, and then see if you can grow that $500 to $1,000 and see how long it takes you, and you will gain very valuable insights into, at the very least, understanding the financial system that we live in. Even if you do nothing else with it, but you might actually find that it, like for me, turns into something more. I think it's cool. I think it's a lot of fun, and I do not think that it is inherently immoral, unlike some people. A bit of a hobby horse, but the last thing that I had in terms of economics was taxation, because this is a there's one of those slogans that gets tossed around, especially at libertarian conventions, of taxation is theft, which it's just wrong. Taxation is not, in fact, theft. There are types of taxation that do amount to something very close to theft, if not just outright theft. But taxation itself is not theft, in my opinion. But I'm curious if you guys have thought about this. John, does the phrase taxation is theft resonate with you, or do you think that's naive?
I don't. If you believe that authority is legitimate from a state or a church or whatever it might be, then that comes with the consequences of that authority, right? It's like, oh, all taxation is theft. It's like, all right, no roads or military, and you gotta get kicked out to Cuba or something like that, right? It's like, whatever, bro. I think most of that's all nonsense. There are taxation that is completely immoral. I think property tax is the worst tax of all. I think an inheritance tax is absolutely evil. I think our taxes get used for evil things, but that doesn't say that the entire concept of taxation outright wholeheartedly is evil and immoral in all circumstances, right? Because essentially taxation at its core, what it should be, is a group of people getting together to say, hey, we are pooling our resources for XYZ purpose. Because guess what? John doesn't want to go fight and die in wars. Okay. John doesn't want to go jump out of helicopters. So he's going to pay somebody else to do that. Right. John doesn't want to man the roads. Okay. John's not going to do that. He's going to pay somebody else. Property tax, income tax, a bunch of these other things, inheritance tax.
Yeah, income tax specifically. Property tax, I agree with you. Property tax is pretty close to being theft, if not just outright theft. I'm a little bit conflicted on it. Like, I think that there's an argument to be made for it being somewhat legitimate, depending on how it's used. But I think that ultimately,
if
property tax
in
amounts
property
to something.
Tax, there is no individual property at that point in time, right?
Yeah. No, I'm with you,
Right.
and I think that property tax is really just another
the
grade
state
of
is
wealth tax,
essentially
which is
loaning it to
completely immoral. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm pretty convinced that property tax is theft. Income tax, that's another question. What do you think, John?
Well, again, it's like, how does the funding work, and is it used for the right things? Okay, from the Christian paradigm, taxes are not immoral. They're not. Christ himself says to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. It's a tale as old as time. Okay, so it is not immoral. However, what those taxes are used for can absolutely be immoral, and we have a duty to oppose those things, right? So unfortunately, some of my taxes go to things like abortion, go to things like what was USA doing? Were we teaching orangutans gay sex in Botswana or something like that? Like absolutely retarded nonsense. So yes, should we end 99% of all of our tax programs? Absolutely, okay. Section 8 breeding farms. We should end almost all SNAP benefits, okay? Healthcare to illegal immigrants. Probably not going to happen, bro. Okay, we're just done with all this stuff. We have young Americans that can't find jobs, can't afford houses and whatnot. I'm ending 99% of all tax programs, and it's all going there. Okay, that's what I'm doing. So again, are taxes in concept completely immoral? No, but in the specifics, that's where we can get down and dirty and be like, well, we're done spending taxes for foreign wars and all the other
Careful about
nonsense,
using the
right?
phrase "down and dirty" during the month of June. That's risky
Well,
phrasing.
listen, in the wise words of Hello Fresh, bottoms up or something.
Yeah, I think income tax is a really like it's whatever basis you choose for taxation is going to hurt, and income tax is not necessarily inherently immoral, but it does create incentives that are not advantageous, right? It is better to tax the spending, a use tax, than your income, because when you tax something, you de-incentivize it, and you are de-incentivizing work when you tax income. Especially when you have a progressive income tax, even more immoral. So you get into all kinds of moral issues when you do that kind of taxation. Is it inherently immoral to tax income? Probably not. Flat tax is much less immoral, if even immoral. Progressive income tax, definitely immoral. Taxing spending is going to be better because now you're actually encouraging people not to spend as much, which seems like a good thing. So you have to consider what incentives you're putting on the tax, right? Like the sin tax, you tax a certain thing that you shouldn't be, that you don't want to encourage in your society.
Drinking, right? We want to disincentivize it, but we'll profit off of it to use that money for good
Right.
things.
So, yeah, sin taxes I think are very silly, because it's like if you're labeling it as a sin, then when you put a tax on it, you're just saying, I want to profit. And you actually now create an incentive for the government to promote the sin because they want to profit off of it. So I think sin taxes
A little bit, right?
are
But it's
probably
like
immoral
a jelly
in a
donut. A
sense.
jelly donut in that context would be a sin tax then, right?
Right.
Because it's like, if a cigarette's going to kill you over time, so is a jelly donut or your energy drink or whatever else it might be. So it's like, people do unhealthy things, okay? So if we
Right.
try and disincentivize that as much as possible, because again, they're not in and of themselves, they're not a sin, right? It's just like day trading, okay? In and of itself, it's not a sin. However, if you're participating in insider trading or scamming or anything else, then it becomes
Right.
a sin, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Wow. We have 255 people watching and growing.
So
Um,
I think it's because Pacific Northwest Gorilla on X shouted us out. I think he has like 120,000 followers,
Aw,
so I
that's
think
so
it's
nice.
on X.
okay. I was going to
thanks,
say, because I don't see it on YouTube, but and it's certainly not on Compulsive Gun Buyer, but so it's like, where are these people coming
it's on
from?
X, I'm pretty sure they're hopping in over there.
Well, we do appreciate it. If you would like to place a super chat, come on over to Compulsive Gun Buyer YouTube channel and do a super chat over there. We have our Ko-Fi link pinned, I believe. That is an option. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to address those. No pressure. But yeah. So yeah, like a use tax or a spending tax. Are you cool with that? Do you think that's kind of the best form of taxation? What would be your ideal tax that you would pay, John? Or Christian, if you have any thoughts.
Well, I think my ideal tax would actually be something that is a universal, right? So if we could figure out some sort of 5%, 10% base rate tax, regardless of anything, like no tax breaks, no nothing, right? Like if we could truly have something that is universal to all people, right? So I mean, if you make $1 billion a year, congratulations, you owe $10 million or whatever it happens to be, right? Or $100 million in that case, right? So I mean, I think that is a truly fair system, because I mean, when you're retired or when you're not making anything, then guess what? You don't pay any taxes at all, right? Because theoretically, you've done that your entire life at that point.
Hopefully, when
Possibly
you're
only a
retired,
sales
you are
tax.
making some interest off of the money that you've been saving. So you should be getting some income. But
Right, yeah.
if you
but I mean,
eliminate
I
the income
wouldn't
tax, then
want
you're not being
to-
taxed on that.
I wouldn't want to have like a capital gains tax or an investment tax for the most part. I could see how that could be abused, but I mean, just like if people are investing their money in the economy, like they're already doing a good thing for your economy.
Yeah, right.
And they're increasing your tax revenue that way. So just allow them to continue to do that.
Taxation is
Incentivizing people to save
de-incentivizing,
money is
yep.
a good thing.
Yep.
Yeah. So again,
Yeah.
maybe sales tax only, maybe just a flat income tax of something 5 or 10%. That's it. Early in American history, it was almost all based off of tariffs. We do they buy things. So if people want to sell to them, just pay the dole and
Right.
we'll let you into our markets, right? So I mean that
Right.
could be a way where it doesn't really affect, because the American populace then has a choice. Do we buy foreign imports with tariffs, or do we buy American without imports or without a tariff? Sorry. So it's like, I think that's a great way, because that way there the American people still have a choice about paying the tariffs or not, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, you guys are both frozen on my screen. Oh, there you go. Now you're back.
Yeah, you cut out for a second, but we got you. I think we were to figure out what you were saying. Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. I think tariffs can become tricky because, again, if you're tariffing a friendly nation, then now you are actually potentially lowering the value within this system if you considered them within your system, but certainly not inherently immoral and can be helpful. Yeah, sales tax makes a lot of sense. Just to go back to this discussion we were having earlier about how the kind of academic study of economics has benefited our society. The Laffer curve is another concept specifically referring to income tax. The Laffer curve is this idea that, well, just look it up. Basically, it's a helpful trick, but basically, if you increase the income tax too much, you actually decrease the overall amount of taxation that the government will receive, because people stop working as much if you increase income tax to a point. There is a point where increasing the income tax actually becomes detrimental to the revenue received from taxes by the government, if you can even call it revenue, which is kind of a misnomer.
Right.
But yes, so there are values to the academic study of economics.
At 40%, I'm going to move that money into something else, right? I'm not going to get that tax as income. I'm going to put that into something else, right?
Which is the problem with
reinvest
the
it or
progressive
something.
income tax, where you see people, and the same with the massive social welfare state that we have as well. I mean, this is, someone else brought it up in a previous comment, but this is absolutely legitimate, where the social welfare state that we have now is so ripe with abuse, ripe for abuse. It's rife with abuse, ripe for abuse. RIPE or RIFE. I don't actually know how to spell rife. But anyways, different words, different context. But it can get really messed up when you have a major welfare state. There's so much abuse going on in it, and yeah, you really get your money being taken to put towards completely illegitimate means, and you get free riders, and you get all kinds of issues there. So that becomes a major problem. Also, when it comes to immigration, if you have a major welfare state, then you have to be extremely controlling of your immigration, because now you're giving a lot of free money to people that may or may not have a legitimate status in your nation. And, illegal immigrants can certainly take advantage of welfare without paying, their fair share into it. They are, in our current system, they are absolutely a net negative on the tax system. And there's other reasons to keep out illegal immigration, which is just immoral in general. But if you're going to make sort of the libertarian case for open borders, you can make that case. There are plenty of moral issues that I have with that case in general, but on a purely economic stance, even someone like Milton Friedman would admit that open borders do not work when you have a massive welfare state. Milton Friedman being a famous libertarian. It just does not work. And so this is why we're having this conversation, because you have these kind of pure capitalist idealists that don't realize that even from their own philosophy, some of the things that they are supporting don't work. And that's why we brought up the goods discussion earlier, the 4 types of goods. Even within a kind of a pure libertarian perspective, if the person knows their stuff, then they realize that public goods are not a good candidate for the private market. It actually is important to have a government that handles public goods. Alrighty. Well, welcome everyone who is just now joining us. This is Redoubt channel where we discuss theology, philosophy, politics, and everything in between. Christian, any thoughts on all of this? Kind of what are your did you ever take an economics class?
No, I probably will eventually at some point now that I'm in school. But I actually do have a question.
Go for
With
it.
the amount of taxes that we do pay on our income, on sales, on fuel, on almost pretty much everything, do you think it's immoral to try to evade those taxes in any way, shape, or form, or anywhere that you are able to?
So, Yeah, it's a good question. That's a really good question.
Yeah.
It depends on what you mean by evade, because
I mean, I could give examples, but I don't want to.
there is
In
a
a legal
sense.
sense, in a legal sense, I evade as many
Legally?
taxes as possible.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, right. That's the point.
Yeah.
There are legal ways to avoid paying certain taxes,
Sure.
and there is nothing wrong with avoiding paying taxes that you don't have a legal obligation to pay. And in this system where we are so overtaxed, I mean, that is something I think we can all agree on, that we are incredibly overtaxed. There may even be a moral case. I'm not advocating this at all, but for avoiding some of those taxes that the government says you should pay, but that morally you're already being way overtaxed.
Well, actually, yes, 100%. Because again, if our taxes do go to immoral things, which I think we all do, I think we have a duty to oppose those taxes.
Yeah.
Now,
Don't
is
put
it
yourself
right
in
to-
in
is it
a
right
bad
to
situation with your
oppose
family
them?
and all that. Yeah.
Well, right. But what
Yeah.
I'm saying is, it's right to oppose them. Morally.
But there are
voice
right
your
ways to do that and
concerns.
wrong ways to do that.
Right. Yeah. So we should oppose them. We should attempt to change them and whatnot. Is it prudential for you to say, screw this, I'm not paying my taxes anymore, and then get, 10 years for income tax evasion? Probably not a wise choice,
Yeah, that would
Even
be
though
both
on-
imprudent and immoral.
Yeah. Well, again, not immoral in the sense that not paying the taxes is necessarily immoral, but in the sense that you have a duty to your family and your community, and now you are absconded from that, and now actually contributing to the debt burden that we all have by paying for your incarceration, right? So you're not actually doing anyone any favors.
That said, yeah, you have no obligation to pay more taxes than you are legally obligated to pay. So if there is any legal means to get out of any cent of taxes that you owe, then by all means do it. If you have a business, log every mile that you travel towards that business as an expense, and put all of that towards avoiding unnecessary taxes on your income. I mean, this is one of the the things that always gets talked about when it comes to certain businesses paying no taxes. Amazon paid no taxes for years and years. Well, it's like, yes, because they weren't generating a profit during those years, or they were taking certain assets that they'd purchased before and amortizing that or depreciating that, and so converting that into an expense in later years because it was a big expense they took up front, and using that to offset some of the profits that they were making, and so it ended up bringing the overall profit to zero. These are legitimate business concepts that actually that allow you to pay less taxes, and there are for watching. You must be on Compulsive Gun Buyer. There are more watching other places, but thank you for joining Delta 34. Really appreciate your content. So there are you have no obligation to pay more taxes than you otherwise owe, and there are plenty of ways to get out of taxes legitimately. And I would encourage that you do so. And this is part of financial wisdom, is learning how to shelter your money from taxes. And especially in this day and age when we are so overtaxed, it is not only wise, but downright almost a moral imperative to shelter as much of your money as you can. And this is where being somewhat entrepreneurial, even if that is not your primary means of income, but finding some ways to convert some of your hobbies into legitimate businesses is a really good way to shelter some of that money from taxation. So I would encourage that. Do it legally. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Rule of law is important, and it matters that we do follow the rules that we have foisted over us, even if we regard some of them as being immoral, and you do not want to put your personal situation at risk. But yeah, no, I mean, you don't have an obligation to pay any more taxes than you otherwise owe.
Yeah, I would agree.
100%.
All right. We should jump into the financial situation of this very dysfunctional marriage. Do you have that clip, John?
Oh, shoot. It's on Discord.
So this is, I'll give some context. This is Caleb Hammer's channel. I watched the entire interview, and I thought it was great. It was very, very entertaining. It's the first thing I've ever watched from this guy, except for maybe some clips here and there. Like I said, it's like Dave Ramsey meets Jerry Springer. It's just a hoot, and put together very entertaining in a very entertaining fashion. But I clipped about 5 minutes from this particular interview with this particular couple that they were having all kinds of issues that aren't even in the clip that I pulled. But basically, the guy makes over 200 grand a year, but they have about $170,000 worth of debt. Most of it is car payments. They have like $80,000 worth of car debt, which is just so unnecessary. And then additional, like, I don't know, $40K in student debt. Anyways, they just recently kind of came into this higher income bracket, and in the end, Caleb was so frustrated because it's like they actually are in not a horrible financial situation, because it really shouldn't take them, if they budget well, it should only take them less than 2 years to really pay off all this debt, which is kind of remarkable. They've just been so incredibly blessed despite their incredibly just poor financial activities up to this point. If they don't change anything, they will get themselves into really hot water. But the couple themselves, the wife engages in some less than advisable activities on her Instagram or Snapchat in terms of like flirting with other guys. There's some speculation that she was cheating. I don't know that that's fair. I don't think that you can confirm that or make that accusation having watched the full interview. And even I went ahead and watched the post show, which is behind the paywall, but I got a free subscription. They actually are kind of charming in their own way, and I certainly hope that they can work it out. But they are their marriage is in hot water, and their financial situation is in very hot water. But that's all the context I'll give. The clips that I pulled where I thought that they might be interesting for our conversation, the male in this relationship has potentially spicy opinions around the Jews and some other things, which I think most of us would just consider possibly based, but possibly going too far as well. So that's mostly what I focused on in clipping it, because that would be interesting to us. Go ahead and roll the clip.
To be with you sometimes, because I guess I would. She says you're very conspiracy brained. She's like nervous of you being around people because you just go crazy, talking about, like, I don't know, you go on this Jew shit all the time. Apparently, like, I don't even know. Talking about Jews, talking about black people, talking about gay people. You just like get all crazy. What's the shit he says that like makes her so concerned? What do you say about the Jews?
Is this guy always this spastic?
A little bit, especially in the clips, in the parts that I pulled. But yeah,
I think they're behind everything since like JFK. Like, I think that the government is not great for anybody. I think that like our current government and governments in the past, since JFK, honestly, it's just a little weird.
Are Jews?
Yeah, well, it's kind of convenient how every president since JFK has now kissed the wall after he was assassinated.
Okay, that part is true. Okay, whoever you think about JFK and who killed him, post JFK, there's been a larger integration with us and Israel in the Middle East. I mean, that's just true. I don't know how you could dispute that.
That is true. I don't think that every president has gone and kissed the wall. I think that is factually inaccurate. But yes, there has been a heightened engagement.
I think the last 6 have at least. You might be, maybe Nixon didn't, although maybe that's why
Reagan
they got rid of him.
There were several that didn't. But.
Okay.
And it was proven that the CIA actually did.
I don't think you mean Jews as a whole. I think you mean the leader, like
Ashkenazi Jews, usually the ones who are over in Israel
the
right
government.
now. The government
Jews,
of Israel.
like those people, not like you can't just say Jews.
No, not all Jews. Jews are great people, but like I'm talking as in like the Israeli government, people who try to control everything.
I mean, all right. I mean, that's fair. He's not doing the all Jews are evil thing. So that's pretty normal. I mean, I don't know. Is that a crazy opinion in 2026?
You could say that about anybody.
It
I mean,
seems
that's yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
Thing. Because it's really convenient how you literally, they're trying to get to the point where you can.
Who
if
did
you-
9/11?
The Jews.
Who killed Charlie Kirk?
Israel. Israel's behind it. All of it's behind it.
okay. Charlie Kirk is a crazy one. Okay, nobody knows. Okay, and if you're listening to Candace, you're probably retarded. So I don't know what to tell you about that one. Although is she still thinking it was the Egyptians? I can't remember.
I don't know.
Or was it
I
the
don't watch your
French?
stuff, man. I have no idea.
Was
Don't
it
know. Don't
Brigitte
care.
Macron swinging dick?
Yeah.
They're involved. The government's involved as well. They're all involved. It's kind of convenient how it's talking 9/11. It's kind of convenient how they were taking selfies, like Israel
was?
Special Forces. Israel Special Forces.
Were they touristing?
No, they were taking as the buildings were burning. They were taking selfies. It was shown like it's actually a thing.
I think he's referring to the dancing Israelis
Dancing
that
Israelis,
were,
probably.
yeah, which is again that's just another thing you can go look up that these people they were arrested after the fact for dancing and celebrating as the towers were burning in the background. Like it's just another real thing. They just happen to be Israelis. It's just don't
Yeah,
worry about
pretty
it.
sure they were
connected to Mossad. Don't
confirmed.
worry.
Yeah, confirmed Mossad. Yeah. Yep.
Yes, I mean it's just one of those things where it's uncomfortable for some people to talk about, but that's true. Now he's probably not coming across in the most like normal way, but it's just like, yeah, that did happen.
Who
Wars
do you
because of things happening.
watch?
I actually don't watch like live news.
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
I try to avoid that. 'cause
Who
it's
do you?
terrible.
Okay, but that's not fair because live news sucks. So just because you don't watch CNN doesn't mean you're not misinformed or
I agree.
uninformed.
I agree.
It's like that's unfair, kind sir.
Read.
I've watched Candace Owens and like read Candace Owens stuff a lot too.
Oh,
there it is.
no.
Yeah.
Damn
that's,
it. Damn
yeah.
it. Gosh dang it.
You were all on his side. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It's so surface level, and then you're like,
For the record, I don't think the Jews are behind 9/11, but there you go.
Do you think they were involved?
Probably not, but I don't know. No, I probably not, but I don't know.
Like on phones and stuff. Like it's not really online. Like not really on TV. Because all major news outlets
Okay.
are actually owned by Jews. Fun fact. That's a whole thing. Like a lot of their hierarchy is all Jewish people on almost every major.
See, this is upsetting because this guy joined the club like 5 minutes ago and he's like spouting off all this stuff. And it's like, listen, bro, okay. Take a chill pill. Relax, dog.
Right.
We get it, okay?
He is a
Like,
recent convert. He even says it later on.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
He's getting
You
all
can tell.
spastic. Did you know that Jews own almost all the media companies? Isn't that crazy, guys? Did you know next you're going to tell me that they run Hollywood?
Including Fox News.
You got a Jewish nose. Are you a Jew?
You have
That was the first thing I thought when I saw her was she is Jewish. What is this guy going on about? That was the first thought in my mind. The ears are below the nose, like an inch below the nose. Which is a comment, okay? Like, listen, I got elite level racism here, okay? You look at the bridge of the nose, you look at the lobes near the corner of the mouth, okay? You guys see what I'm seeing? Very Jewish trait.
a Jewish
One
nose
could
too.
speculate.
No.
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
It's rather
No.
large.
It's like he just gets upset at social shit all day.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically.
I think like the world is it's honestly like
It's just
It's really bad.
listen, yeah, I mean, yeah, I might not agree with some stuff, sure, but like it'd just be too mentally exhausting to give a
That's what I'm.
All the
I don't
time.
know how you can like.
I more just care about
Care.
economics because without a sound economy, none of that even matters.
oh, you're right. I mean
But so it's just like I just care about like the real shit instead of the shit that just is meant to rile you up. And then black people, I guess, and being told as well.
no, black people are fine. I have no problem. I mean, no, like the stereotypical people who cause, like, for example, a Walgreens to leave a community and they're trying to sue Walgreens for leaving that community because they stole too much,
Uh-huh.
and it's a black community. Like that just seems a little weird to me. But black
What?
people,
What do
See, this guy's not up. He's not up to date, okay? he's making me look bad. What is this guy's problem? Okay.
This is why I pulled this clip. I just wanted to see you guys react to it.
Well, I mean, this is what happens when somebody does get radicalized online. You know, it's like they saw Nick Fuentes Instagram reel, and they're
Right.
like, the Jews, the
Right.
blacks, and the
Yeah.
gays. It's like, yeah, but we could be a little more helpful here, okay? There's you okay? I'm gonna break it to you.
For a
bro.
lot
You
of people,
sound like
that's
an
where it
idiot.
ends. Yeah, that's
Well, yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah.
Black people are great, but there are stereotypes that ruin it.
Whatever. Think whatever you want to think. I don't really give a. That's not really my thing. But it's like time and place, my friend. Like if
It usually is. It's usually like
if she's embarrassed of bringing you around people, though, I don't know.
like
she's embarrassed.
A lot of
All
times
right,
people will
there you go.
actually bring up.
That is an actual bit of wisdom. The time and place. Some of these conversations might not be appropriate depending on where you are, regardless.
Well,
No,
of
dude,
your
Thanksgiving
views.
dinner, just bring it up, man.
So,
The whole damn
okay,
family.
I'm married. James is married. Christian, is single, ready to mingle, or whatever the saying is. All the fellas in the chat, okay, your potential girlfriend does not care about how based you are. Shut up. It doesn't matter,
Thank you.
okay?
Thank you.
Women have different interests than you do. It is not
And different
important
instincts,
for-
different nature. Women are not
Yeah.
programmed to think about this the same way. Now, I mean, I don't really align with this guy on a lot of this stuff, even in sort of the basic. Like, I think that thinking too racially is problematic and actually immoral, depending on how you go about it. But there is even if you are going to go down that route, think of the time, think of the place, think of who you're with, and please don't embarrass your wife just because you've discovered all these new things on Reddit. It's not advantageous to either of you, and it's okay to recognize that women think about some of these social things a little bit differently, and it's actually there is a value to the way they view the world. It's irrational and it's totally like, but it actually helps. Like women have
Well, they have a different role in
perspective
society,
and a
okay?
different role in society
Women-
that it's actually beneficial for you to try to understand as much as you possibly can, and even take in some of the wisdom that they have, because they are irrational, but they actually do have wisdom in a different way than men are oriented towards.
Well, women are not the enforcement mechanism. So if you come home to your wife and you start complaining to her about the Jews or whatever it is, like, not only is that useless, but she just doesn't care. It's just,
Right.
it's not relevant to her day-to-day life. It doesn't make you look cool. And like, I get you're excited about that, but that's for you and your friends to discuss. Your wife wants you to ask her how her day was. Okay. She wants you to compliment you on her dress, and that's perfect. Okay. For what a woman is, that's all you need. Okay. You don't need, I know a lot of men are looking for like some sort of deep emotional connection, but no. Okay. Just forget about that. Move on. This isn't a romance novel, guys. Okay. Your woman's going to be there. You're going to say some nice things and move on with your day to talk about real things with the boys. Okay. That's how it goes.
I
Right,
love
James?
this
You
comment.
agree with me?
That's right. Of course. This guy has no survival instincts. I think that's about right. Yeah.
Political to test boundaries and test like people if they're gonna mesh with them or whatever when they
I agree. Like people are assholes, and the fact that they say like, "Oh, I can't be racist." It's like, yeah, it's fucking annoying. Just shut the fuck up, But it's like time and place. If she's embarrassed to take you places because you're always just like the Jews, then yeah, I'd be embarrassed to take you places too.
Yeah, I think that's a little inflammatory on its own. I don't do that
I
everywhere.
really
go.
think you
I
just
don't.
need to let it go.
I
I really like it. I think you need to let it go.
So another problem here in their relationship is that he's seeking her approval, which is not correct. Like, he is putting himself on like this almost lower than playing field. Like he's come across all this new wild information. His worldview has been radically changed, and he's trying to get the approval of the woman in his life. And I think that's a bad place to be in.
He's
I think that-
succumbing to her frame, essentially.
Yeah, he's getting frame mogged by his Jewish wife, which is quite funny. It's
She's
like,
not
no,
Jewish.
bro, you need. I don't know what she is, but you
She's
need
Hispanic.
you need to be. Hey, we got a Hispanic Jew in charge of their country, okay? Mrs. Scheinbaum, I think is her
Rogue,
name. No, she's
yeah,
she's,
some-
she's a Hispanic Jew. Yeah, Scheinbaum. Anyways, in this relationship though, if you are trying to seek your wife's approval to allow you to have these thoughts, essentially, like that's such a bad place to be in. You know, it's like for me, if I have to make a decision in life that's a little bit hard or is going to make certain aspects of our life more difficult, I have to be able to just make that decision without acquiescing in every way, shape, or form or seeking the approval of my wife to do it. Like I do have to be the leader. At some point in time, you have to be able to do that. And again, this is such a tertiary issue as well, where this does not concern her in any way, shape, or form to begin with. So seeking her approval on something that does not concern her is like a waste of time. It's only going to cause you problems in your
Let me
relationship.
expand that a little bit. This doesn't really concern him either. Like they have much more pressing issues, and there's a part of this interview that I couldn't find, and I couldn't get it into the clip, and maybe I just hallucinated, but I'm pretty sure where she made the very good point that if he was to spend half of the time that he spends diving into these conspiracy theories into actually solving their financial situation, then they would be in a much better situation. This is, the question that I have.
Well, that's the
is
meme, right?
what
The meme is
profited
that you're
a man? What profited? What is the profit for this man in diving into these issues when he has so many real, tangible issues that he can affect in his control right now that he should be focused on? That
comes down. What is it? The sphere of influence and the sphere of control.
Yeah,
essentially.
exactly. If you're just riling yourself up, I mean, stop watching Candace Owens. You're getting bad information.
That's
But
a waste of time.
It's a waste of time, absolutely. Same with Tucker. There's a lot of people, but seriously, like, just make your own life better and love the people around you, whether they're Jews, blacks, even gay. Like, there's a lot of love that you can be, putting out into the world from where you are that will be a much better investment of your time than diving into all of the issues with the world that you can't fix.
That's right. Love putting out and gays all together. Okay, guys. Well, it's the meme though. It's like the 27-year-old weed addict who's like getting stoned in his parents' basement, complaining about everything outside of his control when he could actually just go do something positive with his life, like work out or shower or do anything useful in his own sphere. Yeah, I agree, Shadow Force. Doing something physical or anything like that. It's all off. And obviously their priorities aren't straight. She's posting thirst traps to Instagram. He's watching Candace Owens, which is like, I mean, that's cognitive dissonance cheating or something. There's something in there where that's got to be infidelity of some sort. I don't know, man. Stop noticing. It's not about stop noticing. It's about doing what you actually can do. Because listen, okay, I know
Stop
people
obsessing.
who went down this rabbit hole and do absolutely nothing in their lives. So they ironically, they blame external groups for all of their lives' problems when they themselves have not done anything. It's the weights are of your own design. Your chains are of your own making.
Yeah, BB
But
Net not
man,
Yahoo
it feels
isn't
good to
blocking
blame the
gym door
Jews.
for you. Yeah.
It does make life simpler, okay? If you just you have this external like evil group of people, let's call them grabblers for the sake of argument. Hypothetically, they're these beady-eyed, big noses, these little goblins. They love money, and this hypothetical group of grabblers. They're all of my of my problems stem from
right.
them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just remove all personal accountability from the debt that you've gotten yourself into, and just blame the people that set up the system in your worldview. Yeah.
Also, listen, if your wife that you're trying to explain these things is posting thirst traps of herself to Instagram or whatever she was doing, she's looking for someone else, bro. She does not respect you. And you're like, no, honey, listen, it's the Jews that are making you do this.
It's fascinating. If you watch this whole thing, I almost included it, but I ended up cutting it out. But basically, Caleb Hammer is throughout this interview, well, not throughout, but specific points, he's basically encouraging her to leave him, which is immoral. But if you're not coming from a Christian perspective and you don't think that divorce is inherently wrong, if that's your perspective, there are plenty of reasons why one might think that her life would be better off if she left him. Not because of the Jew stuff, just because of the other things. But she is actually really resistant to that. Like, she is pretty committed to this for reasons that she can't even quite articulate. But it's actually kind of sweet, like how she really does seem to like and appreciate him, despite the really egregious financial situation that he's managed to get them in. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is very entertaining, and I came away from it with a surprisingly positive view of both of them, even though they're clearly very dysfunctional and have all kinds of issues that I hope they can work through, and maybe more serious issues that are in fact deeply immoral. I don't know if there's any infidelity. There is certainly some evidence of that kind of thing, but it's not clear that it's really ever gone that far. But it's like, yeah, I mean, I wish the best for them. I try to see the best in people, but yeah, it's a funny. The whole thing is extremely entertaining.
Well, should we keep going, or should we call it there in terms of value from this clip?
Keep going. There's more here.
Let it go in as a whole, or let it go here?
No.
Because I'm not letting it go. It's never gonna
No,
be a
like
thing.
let it.
But what's your obsession? Like, why? You
I
can't.
just-
Let's pretend every single bit of it's correct. You can't do anything.
No, 100% can't.
So just live your life. It's a temporary life. Just
Yeah.
try to do the best you can with the ability that you have.
I hate
The Jews.
You're sheltering enemies of the state, are you not?
I hate the direction of the
That's
country
good.
currently. I
Okay.
hate all of it.
What's
I
the
think-
direction?
I think that like it's just been not like the economy is first thing. Like we're drowning. Everyone's drowning.
What do you mean we're
can't-
drowning?
More like less people who are young have owned a home. Like people who are my generation, it's harder.
Okay, pardon my language, but fuck the guy who edited this video. Like, that is absolutely true. Like, since 2006, I want to say 70% of all jobs have gone to non-US born people. Like, yeah, US home ownership is at its lowest point ever. It's like there are plenty of things that the young can rightfully complain about. So this guy, the editor, making a funny and making fun of this guy for maybe not articulating that properly, like, just
So-
get out of here. So obnoxious.
I half agree with you, but I think Caleb makes an interesting point in the next few minutes, which is why I wanted to continue this clip, about the specific issue of home ownership, which I want to hear your thoughts on. So to keep playing.
Going to get into a home.
Yeah, but why do you need to buy a home? Like most personal finance experts, like don't even advise owning a home. It's like
No.
classic American dream bullshit, but the marketplace outperforms it any day of the week. So rent,
I want to get
especially with how
several-
quickly you move. Why would you want to own?
well,
You move everywhere.
Yeah, I don't want to move anymore personally, but I have to go
You
where the money
literally,
is.
you literally have been talking about us moving to here.
Austin or Dallas.
Obviously,
yeah.
depends on multiple places, but we do know that the median household income in the United States currently can afford 25% of the homes on the market. That is low. Before COVID, it was 50%. So it's mostly interest rates driven at this point. So it's not great, but listen, it's like once the interest rates go back to normal, and if it gets closer to that 50%, it's not like the end of the world. Millennials, 50% of millennials own a home, if I'm not mistaken, and 25% of Gen Z. So like it's not complete doom and gloom. We have more disposable income than any other portions of humans that have ever existed in the history of
Yeah.
humanity. So like,
I
are you
guess
just
I have
going to be
malice.
doom gloom gun in the mouth, or are you going to do shit? You
No.
do incredibly well. You make almost twice the median income in the United States.
Yeah.
You're just going to be sad, cry, be a pathetic, whiny little baby. Or are you going to go do something? You
All right, what's that?
That was the end of the clip.
That's the end of the clip. Go watch the whole thing. I thought it was entertaining. On housing specifically, I will just say that there is a reason why I'm currently renting, and it's not because I'm financially irresponsible. There are plenty of times where it does not make financial sense to rent, and it's not just I mean, it is partially a part and parcel to the current economic system, but it's also just because of some of the natural changes that have taken place that are not necessarily inherently bad. Yes, interest rates are very high. Hopefully they will eventually go down. Although some would say that now is the time to buy a house because it's harder to sell a house right now because interest rates are so high. So you can just buy a house now and then potentially get a lower price in the house and then refinance once the interest rates go down. I don't know. I'm not telling you what to do with your money. I do think that in relation to our earlier conversation about good debt versus bad debt, it makes a lot of sense to wait until you have a lot of cash on hand before you go and purchase a house. So you can do that kind of transaction that I was talking about earlier, where you were actually putting less than you could otherwise down, because you can, and you can lock in a rate that is advantageous to you, that you can actually generate a higher ROI personally than the interest rate that you're paying, and be in a situation that is good. And I think waiting until you're in that kind of situation to own a house is a good idea. And I think that there was, people owned more houses younger in a previous time. The houses weren't as good. They were much, much smaller. The standard of living was much lower in those halcyon days. So it wasn't all just rose-colored glasses, but there is we live in a different time, and one of the practical implications is that renting actually makes a lot more sense for longer for a lot of people. We should not view simply how many people own homes or have purchased homes, in many cases in an act of financial imprudence, as the ultimate standard for whether or not people are doing well. It's a complicated situation. I'm not saying that that's all that there is worth saying about it, but I think that you can't just look at that one issue and adopt this sort of doomer mentality about the overall economic state of the country. I do think that it's worth owning a home at some point. I certainly hope to have lots of land, property, houses to pass on to my kids. I'm absolutely in favor of owning property. I'm not one of those, globalist, you will own nothing and be happy type of people. I think that absolutely you should aspire to own real property, become part of the landed gentry, as it were. But do so in your time, in a way that is financially smart in the current time that you live in. And it's going to change exactly when you want to pull that trigger.
Right. I mean, I couldn't disagree more with just about everything you said there. I think one of the first things that you said was a natural change in the US economy. And I couldn't think of a more unnatural thing than basically unkept immigration, an H-1B system that prioritizes foreign-borns over Americans, the president himself saying that he doesn't care about lowering prices on houses or anything else like that. I think it also goes to this rootless parasite mindset where they say, "Oh, well, hey, you're going to move anyways. You don't want to be nailed down to one location." If people are not able to buy homes, if they are not stable in one location, it's much harder to start families, and that is what I am primarily concerned with. So I think homeownership and families are tied together, right? So this idea, well, you're going to have to move, you're going to have to go somewhere else, you're going to have to do something else. You can't just stay in one location anymore. I think all of that is based off of this modern inversion of the American economy. It's like, yeah, well, things are bad now. Homeownership is half what it was like 5 years ago. Like 5 years ago, homeownership is twice as difficult to get into, right? It was 50% of people, even that guy's own statements, like 50% of people could afford a home 5 years ago. Now only 25% of people can. Is it getting any better? No, it doesn't seem to. Inflation
Well,
may
he
have
certainly expects it to.
slowed its rate of increase.
At least taking his assumptions, he certainly expects it to, and I think that it probably will.
Right. So he's saying, hey, give it another 5 years and maybe it will get to where it was 5 years ago, which was already in another bad state. Right. I think that there is
50% of people
reason.
owning property is not a horrible situation
Having
compared to
the
a lot of
potential.
history.
Having the
I mean,
potential
owning
again, but
owning property
comparing us
used to
the
be
Middle
something
Ages,
that was extremely rare.
again,
It
we're
was
we're
only
not comparing against all of human history. That doesn't
Well,
seem
that's my
logical.
question is we
we're
should
comparing against
operate in our
American
current
history,
time, and rather
our
than just
history.
complaining, sure, but American history
See, I'm
goes through
not
its own
just
phases.
complaining. I'm saying that there are reasons why the economy is the way that it is, and no one seems to want to fix it. No one seems to want to do what is necessary to actually make it better for us, the people, right? So it's not just complaining to complain. Like, I don't even agree with that guy in that context because it's like, I am working very hard. Everyone I know is working very hard. That guy is making a lot of money. He's just retarded and not able to spend his money properly. But I feel for the plight of my brothers and sisters in this country who are young, who are working, and who cannot afford to own a home and whose current job prospects are terrible, right? Like the average person submits hundreds or thousands of job applications before he even gets one. Again, when it comes to the job market, the majority of American jobs in our country have gone to foreign born workers over the last 2 decades. Okay. We are leaving our young out to dry, and then telling them to stop complaining is like,
We can
no,
agree
we
on
need to
that
fix
being
it.
an issue. Absolutely.
Well, but all of these things work together, right? And you
Right.
understand why the American person, the average American, not the high level intellectual who is very well trained and very adept in playing in this broken system. I'm not really concerned with that individual. They're going to do well in any system that's around. I'm concerned with fixing the system writ large.
I mean, I don't disagree with that statement. Where there are issues in the system, we should strive to fix them. Although most of these issues are going to be on your sphere of control, and so you should simply try to do the best for your family in the system that you are currently living in. And complaining is going to do absolutely nothing for you.
But it's not just about. See that I don't know what is the alternative is to just shut up, take it. But I say no. We complain, we scheme, we plan, we move the levers of power, and we put the people in charge that we want.
Sure.
Right? Because
Yeah, I have no issue with
that's
that.
my job. That's my job, is to mobilize a base. Right? I'm a propaganda dispenser. Okay, that's what I do. I'm trying to get like-minded people into a power cell to actually put weight upon the levers. That's my job. So I mean, you
Right.
can call it just complaining, but that seems
But,
like
but
don't
again,
talk about it.
there was a period in time, 5 years ago, when about 50% of people owned homes or could afford to own homes. Many of them didn't choose to for whatever reason. Many of them probably prudent. And now we're at a lower position. Hopefully, we'll go back up. But that is a radically different position than we've been in for much of history. Every situation, I mean, history is going to progress, and the external factors are going to change, and you should have the personal accountability and wherewithal to operate as best you can within whatever system you find yourself. And we still live in a society where
that's just
many,
a
many more people can
truism.
own property than historically were able to. And
It's not relevant to compare 2026 to 1226. That's not relevant. How about we compare it to 1976 or 86 or 96, right? Our like within my
why is that not
lifetime. How
relevant?
about we Well, because it's like, hey, you should be happy that you're dying of cancer at 65. We used to die at 53 in 1411. It's like, how does that help me or is relevant in my current case? It's like, hey, we shouldn't complain about our falling education standards. In the 2nd century, no one could read. It's like, thanks for something, I guess, right? But it's just not relevant. Like comparing 2nd century literacy rates to our falling education standards is not relevant. Who cares?
Well, it would seem somewhat relevant in terms of how much you should be complaining, but in terms of what you can do, I agree. None of it's really relevant.
Recognizing
Just
what is the real situation
do the
that
best
we
in the
are
situation
all
that you're
dealing
in.
with is not complaining, okay? If I am bleeding from my chest, saying, hey, I'm bleeding from my chest, this hurts. James walks by. Stop complaining. It's like, what? What? No, I'm bleeding from my chest. Do you understand? And in this analogy, the bleeding chest is our American youth. Now, if I was crying and moping and not trying to apply a tourniquet or a bandage, then you could say, hey, John, you should actually do something about it. But I am using the only instrument I have, that being my voice, to do just that.
There are so many things that young Americans, any Americans, can do in this current system to improve their standing, they're not in the situation of being shot with no one to help them. I mean, the analogy just doesn't hold.
All right. To the person, like a close personal friend who's put in like 1,000 job applications with no acceptances. He's working full time. Fortunately, he's by himself. He's renting. You're just going to say, oh, well, you know what? You should have applied to jobs harder or something, right? Like, I dislike this mentality. Yes, of course, there's just a true level that, yes, there's always something that we could be doing, we should be doing, but that's just the base level of human existence, right? But that
Mhm.
doesn't negate the fact that we should also attempt to change the system while operating within it. Like, I don't
I'm not
feel like these
negating
two
that
things are
fact.
mutually exclusive.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I agree they're not. I mean, I'm not even saying where there are specific issues that you can call out. It's fine to call them out. I don't see the justification for the doomer perspective. There may be a person may be in a really dire position for a combination of personal and systemic issues, or maybe exclusively systemic issues, which obviously would be a problem that it might even be justified for them to complain more than someone else who is primarily there due to personal decisions. But I don't think that is the. There is certainly a mixture in our current society, and there are ways to make it well in this current society. I'm not denying that there are issues, but I'm just trying to encourage people to go after the things that will actually improve their lives. And I think it does help when you put things in a little bit of perspective, not just of the last 5 years or even the last 50 years, but put things in a little bit larger perspective and realize how incredibly blessed we are amongst humanity to be living in the current time that we are. I think that that's relevant. Am I saying anything crazy?
I mean, no, not that last part, but I feel like that was a switch from your original position.
I don't think so. I think that was my original position.
Well, no, 'cause
Maybe I didn't make
you
it
were
clear.
saying that to stop complaining, but then you almost immediately flipped to say that when there is something bad, call it out, which was I just don't understand the difference or the distinction there.
No, like you said earlier, I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. You can call bad stuff out, but
Well, right.
but
Then you
don't
told the guy-
blame. Well, first accept your own personal issues, and if you have contributed to your own sorry state, which very likely you have, at least in some regard, there are very few people that are just purely victims of the system. Realize that. That's in fact that is the much more important thing to dwell on, because that's the only thing that's going to help you to change whatever you're currently doing that's messing up your life and improve it. And yeah, of course, if there are systemic issues,
I
you
do
can call
not
this
know
out and
how
you can point this
personal
out.
reflection fixes the economy, but I suppose that can help for your own issues.
Yeah,
I-
well,
don't
those are
know.
the
I don't
issues that
know,
you
man.
have.
All right, boys.
Well-
I think we should wrap it up for the night. I'm
All
tired.
right. Okay. My only point that I was making is that towards the end of that clip is that not owning a house is not the end of the world. Most people throughout time have not owned property, and I think that it is good to aspire to own property, but to do so in a way that puts you in a bad financial situation is not wise. And I think that many people, because they see owning property as being the ideal, and it is in fact a good, do it prematurely and in a way that is unwise. And your economic situation and the systemic factors do contribute to whether or not it is a good time to pull that trigger. and so whatever time you currently live in will contribute to that decision and when you make that decision. And so I would encourage everyone to eventually try to own property, but don't do it at a time when it's going to put you in a financial slavery to your lender. Yeah, would it be nice if those pressures weren't there? And are there some systemic and even external pressures that have put us in our current situation? Quite possibly. But still, your situation is going to be, it's a situation that you're in, and there's only so much you can do, and there are always going to be the next best thing that you can do, and that is what you should focus on. That is the entirety of my point. All right, there we go. Hopefully that's not too contentious. Thank you all for watching. We've been going for about 3.5 hours now, and we have a lot of viewers, so I do appreciate you all being here with us. We do have a Ko-Fi that we should get to, so let me pull that up real quick. Let's see if I can find that. Let's see. John, if you have it, feel free to call it out.
I don't have access to that one. I don't know
No,
why. I
that's
don't know if it was
okay.
like super spicy, but it did not pop up on the public Ko-Fi.
Yeah, it's not showing up immediately from mine either. Let me see. Let's see. I have access to the actual Ko-Fi account. Let me find it. Apologize for the wait, guys. All right, I'm in. All right. BCS 1488 says finding out redeemed Zoomer is ethnically Jewish really makes sense because of his odd heretical views. Thank you very much for the support. And I cannot neither confirm nor deny redeemed Zoomer's ethnic Jewishness. Do you guys know anything about that?
He said that he's Jewish, so
Okay,
he
there
is
you go.
ethnically partial. I mean, he grew up in New York in like a Jewish
makes sense.
enclave, and he was an atheist for a long time, so it all checks out.
All right.
And not that that's anything bad about Redeem Zoomer. I like Redeem Zoomer. I've watched a lot of his content. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for being here with us, especially so late in the evening. It is almost 12:30 here in the Eastern time where I am, so it is a good time to end. God bless you all. We really do appreciate your time and investment. We hope to see you here next Tuesday, which is when we normally stream at 9 p.m. Eastern. And thank you all. Christian, John, thanks for being here. God bless everyone.
Night, fellas.
God bless.